In Marvel, you refer to this as magic. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. I'm a child. I cannot bear to see this. Monthly ticket requested. The blush on the woman's face that could have caused misunderstandings had faded. What was left was only a very complicated emotion. This was the first time she had seen Ronan's close combat, and Ronan, who was standing by, was dumbfounded. What's wrong? What are you going to do? I don't agree with you, but you don't have to show me your heart, do you? People are couples in love, and they play like this, and they are just talking. You are directly showing your heart and lungs. Haven't you ever thought that your torn clothes reveal, how to say it? Ronan is still an underage gentleman. Well, I have a suggestion, just a suggestion. Can we cover up the clothes? I'm still a child and can't bear to see this. Ronan covered his face with both hands, but the gap between his fingers was just a little big. Well, just a little, just to make it easier to breathe. Tony Stark, who was a mixed up in the team battle, and Strange, who was invisible throughout the whole process, were full of despair. Brother, it's time now, and you're still doing this. The opponent has taken out his heart, and it is obvious that he is holding back his ultimate move. Can we win the team fight first, and then show the icon? Otherwise it is easy to be struck by lightning. Among them, Tony Stark quietly moved a step outward. He was afraid that he would be injured by mistake when Ronan died. After all, he just fell from the sky, and he knew how painful it was. Ronan didn't even want to look at the expressions of these two people. These two people are just like those teammates who are bad in some competitive games. While shouting I'm leaning on you, I'm here, go, 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 I'm behind you. They are actually developing silently thousands of miles away from you. As for what they said, just pretend that you didn't hear it. So Ronan selectively ignored the expressions of these two people. Do you think you have won? Don't you feel that your life is about to end now? The woman gritted her teeth and shouted this sentence almost word by word. Even from such a distance, Tony Stark could see the woman's slightly trembling body. Tony Stark took a deep breath and silently gave Ronan a thumbs up in his heart. At the same time, he made a decision in his heart. Unless he had no choice, he would never play with Ronan. Oh, really? In that case, how about we have a discussion? Let's pause the battle for now. I'll go find a coffin shop to make a coffin. And change your clothes at the same time. You kill me later, and let these two carry me into the coffin and bury me. What do you think? Ronan held his chin with his right hand, and put forward an idea with a very serious expression. Bang! There was a slight sound from a distance. The woman actually crushed the heart in her hand. Tony Stark, who had already taken off his mask, opened his mouth wide, and the scene in front of him seemed to shatter his three views. And Ronan on the side was also shocked. It is said that only people who have been hurt in love can feel the heart-wrenching feeling. But this kind of heart-wrenching method is really the first time Ronan has seen it. Sure enough, the longer a person lives, the more knowledge he can gain. The ancients are not deceiving me. Anyway, Ronan agreed with this statement very much. Ronan, it's your fault that this world is swallowed by dark energy. Not only can you not save this world, you also have no future. My original self will build a tomb for you in the future to commemorate you who never appeared. The woman smiled wildly at Ronan and said the last harsh words. The mirror space that had been maintained was suddenly opened by her at this moment. The surging dark energy instantly tore her clothes apart. Ouch. Ronan screamed and quickly covered his eyes. There was only a gap left for breathing. Hey? Why is there no underwear? He is a minor and can't stand looking at this person. When the woman's body was exposed to the air, she seemed to have suffered some kind of violent attack and let out a very shrill scream. But even though she was in great pain, her eyes were still fixed on Ronan, as if she wanted to see Ronan's desperate look. However, she was disappointed. Until now, Ronan still had an indifferent expression on his face and even yawned. The mirror space belonging to Ronan enveloped everyone in it at this moment. Damn, this level of dark energy. Strange's expression was completely different from Ronan's. How long has it been since he last saw this kind of dark energy? Back then, he used the time stone to force Dormammu away and forced him to sign an unequal treaty. Since then, the universe has never been invaded by dark energy again. But now, this terrible dark energy has invaded the Earth again. If we are not careful, I'm afraid that the entire Earth will usher in the biggest crisis in history. Now Strange finally understood why the woman took out her heart and crushed it before the battle. There is a great possibility that it was to finally release the dark dimension energy in her body. However, Ronan patted his shoulder. Relax, young man, don't look so inexperienced. Didn't you just face off against Dormammu? This little bit of dark energy can also make you change color? Ronan looked surprised. Strange's face turned black. Can that be called the same situation? At that time, he had the time stone, so he set a trap for Dormammu, and only then he resisted Dormammu. Now, he doesn't have the time stone. Even the other party is just a simple energy body, and there is no condition for communication at all. Seeing his appearance, Ronan couldn't help but sigh. Young people are young people. They should learn to be mature and stable. Look at me, aren't you panicking at all? Ronan patted Strange's shoulder and signaled him to relax. But how could Strange relax? If he didn't pay attention to this, the Earth would be in danger of disappearing. Once Ronan's mirror space disappears, the energy of this dark dimension will completely occupy the entire Earth. At that time, Strange didn't even dare to think about what would happen. Don't worry, I'm here. Ronan raised his head and looked at the sky. Strange rolled his eyes and complained, "Can you eat it?" However, Strange never thought that he really did say what you mean. Hey, the young man is quite spiritual. Let's have a buffet. After saying that, Ronan soared into the air in Strange's surprised eyes and rushed directly towards the dark energy that was constantly dissipating. Is he looking for death? This was Strange's first reaction. Wait, those are all dark energy. Once you are entangled, you will. Before he finished saying the word fallen, Strange watched the dark energy engulf Ronan. What the F***ck? Let's change the update time. Now it is changed to 7:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon. Everyone usually has time at this time, the so-called fragmented time, so let's change it so that everyone can see the update in fragmented time. Finally, as usual, I would like to ask for monthly tickets. I was originally ranked 13th, but unfortunately I was overtaken by the people behind me. I urgently need the help of brothers. Chapter 52. You belong to darkness after all. What is he going to do? Tony Stark flew to Strange's side. However, Strange just stared at the place where Ronan disappeared without saying a word. He could clearly feel how terrible the dark energy was. Although it was far less than the desperate Dormammu, it was not something Strange could deal with now. Until now, there has been a question that has been bothering Strange. How did this woman enter this universe? Her dark energy could not possibly be hidden from the defense array on Earth. Was there something wrong with the defense array, or was there something that Strange didn't know? Thinking of this, Strange shook his head suddenly. Now is not the time to think about this. Ronan still. When he looked up again, he found something extremely strange. The dark energy that was still escaping outwards actually stopped spreading, and even showed signs of shrinking faintly. What on earth happened? Strange looked at the sky with disbelief on his face. Faintly, he seemed to see a touch of golden light. But a very harsh sound rang out. Strange and Tony Stark subconsciously covered their ears. The sound was like tinnitus, but more sharp, making people feel like they wanted to die. As the sound rang out, the dark energy that had stopped spreading actually shrank rapidly. The speed was even faster than before. The time stone. Still. Strange covered his ears and watched the changes in the sky. He quickly denied the first guess. If it was a time stone, then he could feel the flow of time. Even if it only acted on this ball of dark energy, he could still feel it. Just like when Ronan used the time stone to recall the self-destructing Thanos. What the hell is going on? As the golden light became stronger and stronger, the dark energy could no longer cover Ronan's figure. At this time, Strange saw that the spreading dark energy was actually absorbed by Ronan with his left hand. The golden light also came from Ronan's left hand. Strange was already dumbfounded. He was actually absorbing dark energy. That's right, Strange confirmed that he was not mistaken. Those dark energies that frightened people were shrinking towards where Ronan was. In Strange's impression, he had only seen people who absorbed dark energy once. That was Caecilius's group. Oh, and there was the Ancient One. At that time, because the Ancient One absorbed the dark energy, Caecilius did not believe the Ancient One and privately communicated with Dormammu, trying to help Dormammu invade the Earth. At that time, Dormammu's invasion was resolved by Strange using the Time Stone. But also because of this incident, Mordo also left Kamar-Taj and didn't know where he went. So since that incident, Strange has been very vigilant about the Dark Dimension. Even though there has never been an invasion since then, he still regards the Dark Dimension as the first enemy. Although at that time, he felt that Dormammu was restrained by the contract and could never invade the Earth. But as he served as the Supreme Sorcerer for a longer time, he knew more things. He felt that he was very ridiculous at that time. If Dormammu could be restrained so easily, why would the Ancient One use the power of the Dark Dimension to strengthen himself and deal with the Dark Dimension? Strange thought that even with his current self, he might not be half as good as the Ancient One. And now, Strange saw someone absorbing dark energy again. This had to change his view of Ronan. Was the Ancient One in another world so unrestrained? Would he allow his disciples to absorb the energy of the Dark Dimension without even caring about it? Strange secretly prepared a spell. He clearly remembered that people who absorb dark energy would basically change their temperament. Not everyone is the Ancient One, who can face such a huge force and only take a scoop and then leave calmly. Compared to the extremely shocked Strange, Ronan, who was surrounded by dark energy, felt unusually comfortable. It was like the kind of comfort that could not be described in words. It was like entering a forest path, feeling the light rain that kept coming, and the kind of crazy running a few steps, feeling the heartiness after exercise. This was the most appropriate adjective Ronan could think of. As the dark energy was continuously absorbed from Ronan's left hand, Ronan actually felt that his body had undergone some changes. But Ronan could not describe what exactly had changed. However, his keen mental power told him that it was definitely changing. Child, welcome home. As Ronan continued to absorb the energy of the Dark Dimension, he seemed to have auditory hallucinations in his ears. That voice seemed to be far away from him, but he could hear every word clearly. Ronan opened his eyes and found that he had come to a completely unfamiliar place. It was pitch black around him, and only 3 candles were lit not far away. In the center of the 3 candles, there seemed to be a black shadow standing there, waiting for Ronan to come. However, Ronan just stood there, with his hands folded across his chest, staring at the man motionlessly. It seemed like he was observing a work of art. Everything around him seemed to be completely quiet, so quiet that he could even hear the sound of the candle burning. After a long time, the black shadow finally spoke. "Why don't you come over here? This is where you should come." A noisy sound like sandpaper rubbing against each other sounded, and Ronan couldn't help but scratch his ears. However, the unpleasant sound might be due to some strange experience. Ronan was not the kind of person who discriminated. I say, you people in the Dark Dimension are also quite strange. When you want to seduce someone, don't you investigate his preferences? Even if you become a big and white one, it's much better than your black and 01. Ronan flicked his right little finger. He had heard too many women's screams just now, and his ears were a little numb. Now he has to suffer this. He has fought so many bosses, can't he enjoy himself when he is seduced? And the black shadow on the opposite side seemed to be unable to do anything because of Ronan. Isn't this what the script says? Shouldn't you let me introduce what are the benefits of joining us? Then you refuse righteously, and I will push you into the cliff. Isn't this a proper script? You belong to darkness after all. Everything about you is like this. Child, it's time to go home. Chapter 53 Dust-Covered Memories. Go home? Ronan had a strange look on his face. This is not something you can say. You know, in a sense, going home is basically the same as going back home. You are trying to kill me. Perhaps because he didn't notice Ronan's strange look, the black shadow continued to talk. You came from darkness, and will return to darkness. Someone deceived you, and took you away from the embrace of darkness. You should be able to feel it. Every time you come into contact with dark energy, your body will change. That kind of wonderful change cannot be changed. The unpleasant voice of the Black Shadow became stronger and stronger. Ronan couldn't help but frown. To be honest, what the Black Shadow said was right, because he did feel it. Every time he absorbed dark creatures, his body would undergo some small changes. This is why he can be called the #1 male fist in Kamatage. But, would it be better if you changed to a succubus? It's just that royal sister style, wearing a black long skirt. Every step will reveal long legs, even open to the crotch. Then let's change the voice to that kind of charming female voice. Will more people be tempted? Ronan, what are you hesitating about? Return to the embrace of darkness. You will gain unparalleled power. Seeing that Ronan was unmoved, the shadow tempted again. However, the expression on Ronan's face became more and more strange. To be honest, I was a little moved, but until you said the last sentence. I will gain unparalleled power by returning to the embrace of darkness. Since your power is so strong, why do you want me to take the initiative? Wouldn't it be better for you to take the initiative? I like to be passive and like to be at the bottom. Ronan looked at the shadow opposite with expectation, as if waiting for the other party to take the initiative. However, the shadow was silent. He seemed to be a little overwhelmed by Ronan. Why don't you play by the rules? This is the second time. Why do I feel like you are playing a trick on me? And what are you doing with your left hand? Ah. With a shrill scream, a huge suction force burst out from Ronan's left hand. The terrifying suction force directly extinguished the 3 candles beside the Black Shadow. It also pulled the Black Shadow not far away to this side. Ah. Ronan, I curse you. You will sink into the most terrifying memory of your life. You will not be able to. However, before the Black Shadow finished speaking, it was swallowed by Ronan's left hand. If temptation fails, then threaten. You are really amazing. The most terrifying memory in my life is that more than a dozen girls confessed to me in turn. That scene, I was scared for my kidneys. Ronan curled his lips, obviously not taking the Black Shadow's words seriously. However, in the next second, a sharp pain came from the back of Ronan's head. The moment before he lost consciousness, he understood. He was ambushed. The silent night. The screams cut through the night sky, disturbing the dreams of many people. Ronan was also awakened by this shrill scream. What's the point of sneak attack? If you have the ability, let's fight one-on-one. When Ronan opened his eyes again, everything in front of him had changed. The dazzling light from the ceiling shone on his face, making it difficult for Ronan to open his eyes. Subconsciously, he wanted to reach out to block the light. But suddenly he found that his hands seemed to be bound. Wait, where is this? Ronan's memory was still stuck in the white Anne. No, it was a sneak attack. And now, he seemed to have come to a completely unfamiliar place. Where is this place? But before he could figure out the situation in front of him, screams came out again. This time it was not 1 or 2, but countless voices wailing. Bang! The door of the bedroom was pushed open by someone. A strange woman with blonde hair and blue eyes stumbled towards Ronan's position. And in Ronan's perspective, the woman in front of him was more like a giant. However, before Ronan could remember the other party's identity, the woman who was running towards him actually fell to the ground. On her back, a sharp weapon the length of a javelin appeared. The sharp weapon penetrated her body directly, and the scarlet blood had already dyed her shirt red. The woman's body fell down with a bang, which brought a violent shock, and Ronan, who had never seen such a bloody scene, was stunned. What's going on? Is it a horror movie now? I tell you, for this clip, you should at least give it a rating, right? For this scene, it should be at least R-rated. However, even with such serious injuries, the woman in front of her still did not die. With the little will she had left, she still trembled and crawled towards Ronan. My son. Before the woman finished speaking, a mouthful of blood gushed out of her mouth. Instantly dyed the carpet red. However, the woman still did not stop. Once. 2 times. 3 times. The blood flowing from her abdomen left a clear blood stain as she dragged. The whole room was also filled with a pungent smell of blood. At this time, Ronan was already dumbfounded. The impact of the scene in front of him almost shattered his 3 views. What on earth happened? Where on earth was he? The screams outside the window continued, and each scream seemed to be everyone's last unwillingness. The messy footsteps had already penetrated the night, and together with the endless screams, it seemed to construct a hell on earth. Finally, the woman finally crawled in front of Ronan. She used all her strength, stretched out her right hand, and slowly leaned towards Ronan's face. It seemed that in just a few seconds, she could touch Ronan. Bang! Snap! A deafening roar resounded through the sky. Then, there was a crisp sound of bone cracking. Ronan watched this right hand being stepped on the ground by a foot. The little light left in the woman's eyes also completely disappeared. Hiss. Ronan couldn't help but take a breath. No. This situation seems to be a little wrong. What are you doing? However, when Ronan said this, the crisp cry of a baby suddenly resounded throughout the room. It was not until this moment that Ronan realized that he had become a baby. Moreover, he was a baby who had just lost his mother. Is it so real? Such a wonderful taste, such a pure dark spirit. If I sacrifice you to the Lord, I will also gain strong power. A rough voice like sandpaper rubbing against each other sounded. A man with red eyes and strange makeup on his face came into Ronan's sight. Ronan could clearly see the cracked skin around the man's eye sockets and the terrifying deep red. There was no doubt. He was the owner of the foot. The man slowly stretched out his right hand and stroked Ronan's face as if he was stroking a rare treasure. His rough palm made Ronan feel a sharp pain. From his eyes, Ronan saw greed and desire. However, the next second, something happened that made Ronan even more desperate. The man suddenly grabbed his neck with both hands, and his face seemed to be in great pain. Amidst the violent gasps, a hand covered with mucus stretched out from his mouth. Such a Cthulhu would not pass the censorship. Now, it appeared live in front of him. F***ck, are you serious? Ronan couldn't help but burst out with a curse, but it turned into the crisp cry of a baby again. He was just a baby, and he couldn't even curse. The hand stretched out from his mouth, grabbed his body at a speed that Ronan couldn't even see clearly. In an instant, a strong sense of suffocation came. Am I going to die? This was the only thought in Ronan's mind at this time. However, the next second, a golden light flashed before Ronan's eyes. The arm that grabbed Ronan's body was broken at the root. Bang! The man standing in front of Ronan was also blown away by a huge force. The next second, Ronan was picked up by a pair of warm arms and held in his arms. The dazzling scene flashed by, and when Ronan regained his sight, he only saw a familiar face. It seemed to be a bald man. Ancient One. An inhuman roar sounded. The man who wanted to eat Ronan before also completely changed his appearance. But Ronan could not see this scene. The woman in front of him seemed not to hear the man's roar, and she focused all her attention on Ronan. Go to sleep, kid. What you have experienced is cruel enough. As she said, the bald woman gently tapped Ronan's forehead with her index finger. For some reason, Ronan felt dizzy and his eyelids became heavier. When he closed his eyes, he only saw the woman's slightly raised mouth. However, at the moment, when Ronan closed his eyes, a mechanical voice appeared in his mind. The host has been detected to have awakened. The system is officially turned on. Confirmed in the current world. Confirmed. The current world is the extraordinary world. The highest level is? Start the highest version of the system and cover up the fate of the host's current world. For the purpose of protecting the host, this memory will be sealed today until the host unlocks it by himself. Startup completed. Wish the host a longer life. In an instant, Ronan seemed to emit a faint light. Ancient One, who had been watching Ronan, frowned slightly. Because in her perception, at that moment, the future seemed to have changed a little bit. This child, Ancient One muttered to herself, and there seemed to be a hint of surprise in her eyes. However, her surprise was soon interrupted by a voice. Ancient One. It's you again. The monster kicked away by Ancient One crawled out of the wall and roared at Ancient One. And Ancient One held Ronan in his arms, and the smile between his eyebrows turned into extreme indifference. Dormammu, you still won't give up. This was the last sentence Ronan heard before he lost consciousness. 11th on the new book list. We are only one place away from the top 10. Brothers, please vote for us, and we will strive to be in the top 10. This chapter is 3,000 words. Actually, if it is a little watery when separated, I can write another chapter, but after thinking about it, I decided to simplify it. Go, go, go. Chapter 54. You have to work harder, Zaoki. On the other side, Strange and Tony Stark in the mirror space are still waiting. As the dark energy in the sky becomes less and less, Strange's vigilance becomes higher and higher. No one knows whether Ronan will still be himself after he falls. Soon, just when Strange was secretly vigilant, Ronan had already fallen from the sky. Ronan closed his eyes, and there was still a trace of dark energy around his body, but it soon disappeared. Are you still okay? Strange looked at Ronan not far away, very cautiously. Once Ronan was confused by the power of the dark dimension, he would have to take action. Tony Stark on the side seemed to feel that the atmosphere was wrong. His exposed head was instantly wrapped in the iron armor, and he looked at the two people very vigilantly. He didn't even know what was going to happen. At this moment, Ronan suddenly opened his eyes. His action made Strange shudder. More terrible things are still to come. Strange clearly saw that there was something like black liquid flowing in Ronan's eyes, and Ronan's face was surprisingly cold. No, this is the energy of the dark dimension. Strange immediately realized that something was wrong. He left the seal with both hands, and Sitorak's scarlet chain instantly bound Ronan. Seeing Strange suddenly attack, Tony Stark was also shocked. Wasn't it fine just now? Why did the two of them suddenly attack? Bang! Before Tony Stark could figure it out, the scarlet chain of Sitorak thrown by Strange was actually knocked away by Ronan's palm. Strange's pupils suddenly shrank. He never thought that Ronan was so strong. However, just when he was about to cast his strongest attack spell, the Thunder of Bossert, a hand suddenly slapped his shoulder. Suddenly, Strange's whole body froze. He knew clearly that the only person behind him was Tony Stark. The touch of Tony Stark's Iron Man suit on his shoulder was definitely not like this. I was just kidding, brother. Why are you still planning to kill me in 1 second? A familiar voice sounded, and this person was Ronan. Strange turned his head stiffly and saw Ronan's handsome face. But this time, there was no longer the flowing black liquid in Ronan's eyes. His face also looked a little more human. Compared to before, he just looked more handsome. Are you okay? Strange did not relax his vigilance because of Ronan's words. In his hands, he had already pinched the ring of Ragada, ready to fight at any time. Once Ronan had any changes, he could also counterattack in the first time. Seeing Strange like this, Ronan couldn't help but sigh. It seems that he had played a little too much just now. Don't worry, I'm fine. This little bit of dark energy is nothing to me. Ronan couldn't help but burp. Strange pulled the corner of his mouth, speechless. What do you mean by burping? Have you eaten enough energy from the dark dimension? Don't worry, I'm different from other people. These dark dimension energies have no effect on me, and I'm not so stupid as to sacrifice myself to save you two. Ronan let go of his hand on Strange's shoulder. This was what he really thought. Because if the situation just now couldn't be controlled, Ronan would definitely choose to slip away in advance. What he cared about more was the scene he had just dreamed of. Although he thought it was fake at first, he actually heard the system prompt later. This dark energy can't even imitate his system voice, right? However, there are so many prompt sounds in this system, which makes Ronan feel a little fake. Is it because I said too much that time, so the number of words was limited later? Also, does this count as a dead memory suddenly attacking me? Although your words are unpleasant, I now believe that you are fine. Strange pulled the corner of his mouth, glanced at Ronan, and withdrew the ring of Regatta in his hand. At least at this moment, Ronan was still very sober. I like this sentence. I can't sacrifice myself to save others. Tony Stark opened the mask of the Iron Man suit again, his face full of approval. It seems that he really appreciates what Ronan said just now. However, when he said this, Strange and Ronan looked at him with a very strange look. This look made Tony Stark's scalp numb. Why are these two people like this? Hey, what do you mean? You don't think I'm the kind of person who sacrifices myself for others? Tony Stark raised his head, looking like I'm not wrong. And Ronan pouted. No wonder you were able to survive when Thanos snapped his fingers. Maybe the Infinity Stones think that you are too stubborn, so they selectively ignored you? Ah, right. Tony, you are a selfish person, and you will never sacrifice yourself like me. I believe you. Ronan nodded in agreement, and gave Tony Stark a thumbs up. Tony Stark's eyes went dark. What kind of words are these? However, Tony Stark soon regretted what he said before. He had clearly told himself before that he would not play tricks with Ronan in the future. Why did he forget it now? Thinking of this, Tony Stark wanted to slap himself. You are such a bad mouth. Ronan was smiling at Tony Stark's face. It was really funny. Red and white, white and purple, purple and black. It was simply a revolving lantern. Forget it. Since you are fine, I'm relieved. But your mirror space seems to be a little different. At this time, Strange turned his attention to Ronan's mirror space. Although the mirror space used by Ronan looked similar on the surface, the situation was different. At least in Strange's perception, Ronan's mirror space seemed to be stronger than his. This also attracted Strange's attention. From the beginning, he thought that Ronan's mirror space was different from his. It was just that he was fooled by Ronan at that time. Hearing this, Ronan's face became serious, and he patted Strange on the shoulder, like an elder. This matter is actually related to my understanding and practice of magic. It's just that I have worked hard for many years to get the result today. So, you still need to work harder, Zaoki. When will this chapter be ready? I can't see the sand sculpture netizens chapter. How can I copy it? No, I feel like I'm clicking. So boring. Chapter 55 Farewell Party. Many years of hard work. You've only learned this spell for a few days, and you've already worked hard for many years. And, you're joking too much. Strange dodged Ronan's hand directly, and he even felt that he had no way to complain. Are you sure you're okay? I find that there seems to be something wrong with your brain. Strange stretched out his hand and gestured to touch Ronan's forehead. But he was slapped down by Ronan. Ronan resisted the urge to roll his eyes. How did Strange become like this? Where is the face of your supreme sorcerer? I don't know who has made Strange like this. Outrageous. In the end, Ronan's jokes were used to deceive Strange. He waved his hand to cancel the mirror space, and several people fell to the ground in a free fall. The three people immediately used their own methods to try to land safely. Oh no, landing safely is already the most basic condition. It depends on who comes down faster and more calmly. When the three people fell to the ground at the same time, they all looked at each other unconsciously, and finally retracted their gazes silently. Well, I didn't find a reason to mock this time. I'll talk about it next time. With the help of Stark Group, the New York Temple has begun reconstruction. Tony Stark even joked that he could change his career to open a construction company. Maybe he could make more money than the current Stark Group. This kind of hell joke, except for Strange. Everyone else laughed. Jokes aside, there are only a few days left before the time machine is repaired. Their next task is to return these infinite gems. Then, send Ronan home. For the word home, Ronan felt so eager for the first time. Of course, Ronan was quite satisfied with this summer camp activity. After all, it is a good thing to spend such a rich weekend. Moreover, when Ronan goes back, there are still 2 days of weekends. It only takes 1 day at most to finish the homework, which proves that he still has 1 day to waste. I feel comfortable just thinking about it. Steve Rogers thought that they should hold a cocktail party before leaving. The purpose was to bid farewell to Ronan. This time Ronan came and really helped them a lot. Although Ronan was a visitor from another world, they had fought side by side after all, and Ronan helped them a lot. If Ronan hadn't taken down the time stone at that time, I'm afraid they would really die together. It can be said that Ronan saved all their lives. Hearing this news, everyone agreed very much. These people have more or less had intersections with Ronan, and Tony Stark and others have a good relationship with Ronan. So, this cocktail party is a natural thing. The only one who is unhappy may be Ronan. You can't imagine that when you are in a very lively party, everyone around you can be regarded as your friends. You have fought side by side, and you have also gone through life and death together. Such feelings are very rare. However, when they raise the bottles and glasses in their hands, you can only pick up the juice in front of you. How embarrassing the scene is. That's right, Ronan didn't drink a drop of wine on the day of the party. It's not that he doesn't drink a drop of alcohol, but Ronan is not yet an adult. I don't know why. The superheroes who usually treat American laws as a joke, this time they unanimously supported their own country's laws. They unanimously asked Ronan not to drink alcohol. In the end, Ronan had to replace alcohol with juice. When he raised the juice and saw the smirks on everyone's faces, Ronan seemed to understand something. It turned out that they had deliberately agreed to make fun of Ronan. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect there is a little friend here. Come on, little kid who can only drink juice, let's have a drink. Tony Stark came to Ronan with a wine glass. You can tell at a glance that he has ulterior motives. Yeah, when I think about the fact that I'm only 16 years old and I still have 60 or 70 years to live, I feel that time is too long. Oh no, maybe one day I can still live forever. If you think about it this way, it's also very uncomfortable to never die. Don't you think so, Tony? Faced with this situation, Ronan must not be timid. As I said, if it comes to talking, he has never lost. As expected, Ronan's words made Tony Stark feel choked up. You know, he is old enough to be Ronan's father. When hearing Ronan say this, Tony Stark felt a blockage in his chest and had the urge to turn around and leave. When the cocktail party was set up, the plan to trick Ronan was proposed by Tony Stark. According to Tony Stark, Ronan's words were too harsh. Especially when he said those sarcastic words, they felt very aggrieved. What about you? The superheroes of the Avengers actually need to be saved by a 16-year-old kid like me. The more they listened, the more aggrieved they felt. So, in the end, they made an appointment to see Ronan make a fool of himself. In the end, it seemed that they won, but it seemed that they didn't win. Ronan's words were epic AoE damage. None of the people present were under 35 years old, or even older. So, without exception, they were all affected by Ronan. What's wrong with your mouth? Why is it completely different from ours? War Machine obviously couldn't stand such words. Judging from his appearance, he is older than Tony Stark. No, it's a matter of IQ. Ronan tapped his temple and fired another critical strike. Although these people were angry and wanted to beat Ronan, their anger disappeared in a few hours because they became drunkards and fell unconscious in the room. Only Ronan, who had been drinking juice, survived. Looking at the drunkards in the room, Ronan also showed a strange expression on his face because he saw all kinds of strange postures. For example, someone's flying style and someone's underground style. Even someone hugged someone else, and the picture was simply unbearable to look at. So, Ronan put them in various postures, and then took out his long treasured mobile phone. Click, click. The sound of pressing the shutter continued. Especially Tony Stark's ugly photos, Ronan took a lot. Ronan planned to give these ugly photos to Tony Stark as the last gift before leaving. Just thinking about it makes me feel that it is a big surprise. Tony, is this kissing photo yours? Or is this kissing photo yours? Or are both of them yours? Thinking of the expression on Tony Stark's face at that time, Ronan's aggrieved heart instantly felt relieved. Comfortable. In the end, Ronan did not forget to put himself and these people in the same shot and took a selfie. Come on, brothers, smile. I have something to announce. I'm happy today, very happy. So, starting tomorrow, there will be one more chapter on Sunday and Monday. Celebrate this very good news. The specific time is 2 chapters at 8 o'clock in the morning and 1 chapter at 4:30 in the afternoon. 2 chapters will be released in succession in the morning. Please pay more attention to it. Finally, I continue to ask for monthly tickets. There are only 4 or 5 days left before the 30-day new book period. I was just thinking, can we make it to the top 10? This is my lifelong wish. Chapter 56 Exciting Weekend Summer Camp. 2 days later, at the Avengers base. Today, Ronan will embark on his journey home. So many days of summer camp are enough for Ronan to have fun. Of course, in addition to playing around, Ronan also took away a lot of experience points. The only pity is that the system determined that the woman was ultimately a suicide. Although Ronan also dealt a lot of damage, the experience points were still low. But overall, it was a good deal. In addition to Ronan who was going home, there was also Steve Rogers who was responsible for transporting the gems. The rest were Tony Stark, who came to see him off, and the Winter Soldier and others. Of course, there was also Bruce Banner, who was responsible for debugging the equipment. As long as the machine adjusted the time, Ronan could embark on his journey home. The equipment has been adjusted. You can start time travel at any time. At this time, Bruce Banner, who was debugging the machine, spoke. His right hand was still bandaged, and the damage caused by the Infinity Gems was not that simple. Ronan, who heard the news, couldn't help but smile. He was going home. Steve Rogers, who had already put on his clothes, stepped forward and came to Ronan. He stretched out his right hand, with a look of gratitude on his face. Although I haven't known you for a long time, and I haven't really talked to you. But, during this period of time, I can confirm that you are a good person. At least in my heart, you are a good person. Steve Rogers threw a good guy card to Ronan, and Ronan couldn't help rolling his eyes. Who would give a good guy card to someone when they meet? Besides, didn't we have a drink together? At least we are friends for drinking and eating, right? However, when Ronan saw Steve Rogers' eyes full of sincere emotions, he swallowed his complaints. He knew what Steve Rogers wanted to do. Ronan stretched out his hand and shook hands with him. Famous Captain America, although you don't know me, I grew up listening to your stories. After all, in every school, when a student makes a mistake and is detained, your video will be played. Ronan smiled and made a joke that only students could understand. This incident seemed to remind Steve Rogers of the past. He was asked to record a lot of videos, all of which were videos, to persuade students to study hard. Those videos, to be honest, have a bit of black history. In the end, Steve Rogers just smiled, and he didn't care about these things anymore. It's done, Captain, you start first. Bruce Banner adjusted the time and said again. Steve Rogers nodded, glanced at the people present, shook hands with a few people solemnly, and then walked towards the time machine. His action also made Tony Stark and the others a little overwhelmed. Captain, do you remember the time points I told you? Except for the time gem, the other gems must be sent back to the original location and time. Don't make any mistakes. Tony Stark looked at Steve Rogers and reminded him again. I understand. Don't worry, I will complete the mission this time. Steve Rogers shook the briefcase in his hand and said with a smile, everything is self-evident. After saying this, he looked at Falcon, who had not spoken. His eyes were very deep and seemed to contain some unknown meaning. No one else noticed the meaning in his eyes, only Ronan knew what was going to happen. He changed Tony Stark's ending, but he didn't want to change Steve Rogers' ending. The former was regrettable, while the latter was a happy ending. Although the world is going to lose the best Captain America, I'm ready. Let's start, Bruce. Steve Rogers took a deep breath. He had made a decision. At the moment, when Bruce Banner pressed the button, Ronan spoke. I remember there is a good Turkish kebab restaurant in New York. Have you eaten there? After Ronan said this, Steve Rogers disappeared. I don't know if he heard it. Okay. Since Steve is gone, I should go too. Ronan exhaled lightly and was about to walk to the time machine beside him, but was stopped by Tony Stark. When he turned around, he saw Tony Stark's sincere but flickering eyes. Tony Stark stretched out his hand and opened his mouth several times without saying anything, as if he was choosing his words. I heard Steven talk about the ending. I don't know how to say it, but I still want to thank you. At least you let me hear that sentence. I love you 3,000 times. Tony Stark pursed his lips, as if he was suppressing his emotions. Although he didn't say what it was specifically, Ronan probably guessed it. However, Ronan shook his head, held Tony Stark's hand, and shook it gently. If you want to thank someone, then thank Morgan and Pepper. The cakes they made are delicious. But this is the first time I see you look like this. Classic American blockbuster. Tough guy with tender feelings, right? Ronan directly broke the sadness of parting. However, Tony Stark did not show a disgusted expression like before, because he knew that this was just an excuse. After the two let go, Ronan also boarded the adjusted time machine. Okay, I'm ready. Ronan nodded in the direction of Bruce Banner. However, Tony Stark walked quickly to the machine and stopped Bruce Banner. I'll take you on your last journey. After saying that, before Ronan could react, he quickly pressed a few buttons on it. There was only a beep. When Tony Stark looked up, He only saw Ronan's middle finger. Then, Ronan disappeared. Looking at Ronan who had left, Tony Stark couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although Ronan was his benefactor, this person's mouth was really too poisonous. Every time he spoke, he could make him angry. This kind of sin should be borne by the younger him. Thinking of this, Tony Stark shook his head. Time travel. This is also a very wonderful journey, right? Tony. Something seems to be wrong. The captain didn't come back. At this time, Bruce Banner seemed to have discovered a blind spot. Because according to the set plan, when Bruce Banner pressed the button, Steve Rogers would come back here. But for some reason, Steve Rogers didn't come back. Bruce, what happened? Bring Steve back. Falcon on the side was anxious. Although he hated running, whenever Steve Rogers passed him, he would shout on your left. But after all, they were also best friends who had fought side by side. If something happened, he couldn't accept it. I'm trying. Bruce Banner's forehead was sweating. He kept pressing the button, but it didn't work. No, I think I know where he is. At this time, the Winter Soldier, who had been silent, seemed to have discovered something. As the sun set, an old man was sitting not far from them, with a package at his feet. From the back, he looked very much like the Steve Rogers they were looking for. Go. The Winter Soldier looked at the stunned Falcon, and said with a smile. Falcon glanced at the Winter Soldier, then at Tony Stark beside him. After confirming that he did not see any other meaning in the eyes of the two people, he walked over. It seems that he still accepted my opinion. Looking at the familiar back in the sunset, Tony Stark also smiled. He once suggested Steve Rogers to try the life of an ordinary person. It seems that this time, he won. Wait a minute, Tony. Ronan doesn't seem to be right. Why is he 2 days late in returning? Bruce Banner looked up at Tony Stark. However, Tony Stark shrugged, put on sunglasses, and took out the car keys from his pocket. A car slowly drove over from a distance. I remember when he came, it seemed to be Friday. Going back 2 days later, just like attending a weekend summer camp. Although this summer camp a little exciting. There are 2 chapters in the morning, and 3 chapters today. Don't forget, this chapter has 2500 words. Actually, you can see that I usually don't release chapters with only 2000 words. Most of them are several hundred words more. Every 5 or 6 chapters I release is equivalent to releasing 1 more chapter. This is why my words are much more than many books of the same period. Please vote. Chapter 57 Tony Stark, I'm going to kill you. When Ronan opened his eyes again, he had returned to the extremely familiar place. It was downstairs of Stark Tower, where he left this universe. Stark Tower, which had just experienced the war, was now decorated by many decoration workers. Although it was already late at night, these rare people were still working overtime. Ronan raised his eyebrows. He was indeed one of the most powerful people in Marvel. As soon as the war was over, he began to rebuild the building day and night. The speed was really fast. However, Ronan was only slightly envious for a short while, and then he found a place where no one was, and opened a secret door. When he appeared again, he had returned to Kamataj. The first person he saw was Wang. Hey, Wang. Long time no see. Ronan walked quickly to Wang's side, and gave him a big hug. Wang was confused by Ronan's hug. What does it mean? Subconsciously, Wang thought that Ronan had come up with some tricks again, and wanted to dig a hole for himself. Wait, stay away from me. Tell me what you want to do with me first. Wang used one arm to pull the two people apart, his face full of vigilance. When it comes to pranks, Ronan has never disappointed anyone. From sticking notes on his back when he was a child, to later teaming up with everyone in Kamataj to play a prank on him. Over the years, Wang felt that he had injured a lot. Am I the kind of person who doesn't get up early without benefits? Ronan glared at Wang, as if he felt that it was an insult to him that Wang thought so much about him. However, Wang didn't say anything, just looked at Ronan with his eyes. The more he looked, the more guilty Ronan felt. Okay, I don't mean anything else. I just came back from a trip and missed you. But I didn't bring you a travel gift this time. Wait for next time. After saying that, Ronan turned around and walked towards the Supreme Sanctuary without waiting for Wang to answer. When he becomes the supreme sorcerer in the future, Wang will still be his most important tool, so give him face now. Anyway, no matter what, it's right to slip away first. Seeing Ronan trotting, the king's face was more puzzled. Where could he travel in 2 days? Besides, if mages like them wanted to travel, they could even save the money for air tickets. There was basically no place on Earth that they had not been to. Ronan didn't know what the king was thinking, but he only had one idea now. Go see the Ancient One. When Ronan pushed open the door of the Supreme Sanctuary, the Ancient One was sitting at the table with 2 cups full of hot tea on the table. Obviously, the Ancient One already knew that Ronan was back. You're back. The Ancient One looked at Ronan, who pushed the door in, and said with a smile. Ronan was not polite. He walked straight to the opposite side of the Ancient One and sat down. Teacher, you don't know how much I suffered on this trip. They all bullied me one by one, and there were even some weird people who bullied me. I'm just a 16-year-old child. They treated me like this. As soon as he sat down, Ronan began to cry about his experience. As he spoke, he wiped away his tears, and his voice and tears were so loud that anyone who heard him would cry. However, Ancient One was not a human. She just looked at Ronan with a smile, and did not say anything, as if she was watching a joke. Ronan wiped away his non-existent tears, and looked up at Ancient One. When he found that Ancient One was unmoved, Ronan curled his lips, and returned to his normal state. It seems that you had a pleasant trip this time. Is there anything you want to tell me? Ancient One picked up the teacup, smelled the tea, and seemed to enjoy the feeling. Ronan resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Don't you know what happened later? Even if he changed a little bit of history, it's actually no big deal. The most worth mentioning is nothing more than those villains who made trouble for him, a decent person. However, before that, Ronan had to do another thing. Teacher, we don't need to talk about other things, but there is one thing I must do. I'll give this thing back to you. I feel uneasy when I sleep with it. Ronan took off the Eye of Agamotto from his neck and handed it to Ancient One. Although both the Eye of Agamotto and the Time Stone are very powerful weapons, picking any one of them is enough to greatly improve Ronan's combat effectiveness. But Ronan is too weak. Although he doesn't want to admit it, this is indeed the fact. If these things are in his hands, and are snatched away by some enemies he doesn't know, then Ronan will really have to apologize. For example, the hooded man. For example, the violent woman. Therefore, returning it to Ancient One is the best choice. In addition, there is another very important point that Ronan didn't say. He has experienced the power of the Time Stone. The evaluation is only 2 words: outrageous. Like this kind of power that can control time, arbitrarily distort the acceleration and reversal of time. This feeling is really great. But at the same time, this situation is also extremely dangerous. Let's not talk about whether Ronan will be punished by time itself in the end for playing with time like this. For Ronan personally, this is not a good thing. When he gets used to relying on the Time Stone, he basically has no intention to improve his strength. Although he is reluctant to admit it, Ronan still knows himself. People like him, to put it nicely, just like to slack off, or to say that they have had enough. To put it bluntly, they are greedy and lazy. Once he gets used to the power of the Time Stone, he will probably be useless. Ronan thinks that he does not have the willpower to resist not using the power of the Time Stone. Therefore, it is better to cut off this idea. Without this idea, there is no need to worry. Why is the power of the gem not strong enough? Ancient One took the Eye of Agamotto from Ronan and asked with interest. Strong, of course. After using it once, I fell in love with this feeling. But teacher, your disciple is just an ordinary mortal. Since I can't control my desires, put the source of desires where I can't find them. Only in this way can my desires be cut off. Ronan didn't mean to hide anything, and he spoke his mind very truthfully. For 16 years, he has been accustomed to this way of communication in Kamatage. Especially with Ancient One, the 2 of them are not like mother and son, not like master and apprentice, but more like friends of different ages. Hearing Ronan's answer, Ancient One was not disappointed at all, but showed a relieved smile on his face. Just as Ronan said, as long as you are a person, you will have desires. No matter who comes, they can't deny this. But whether you can restrain your desires is the key to distinguishing people into different types. Okay, since you said so, then I'll accept it. This pleasant weekend seems to have made you grow a lot. Ancient One put on the Eye of Agamotto again, and with a golden light, the Eye of Agamotto disappeared. Obviously, she was very satisfied with Ronan. Of course, I went through a lot this weekend. Teacher, you know there's an alien. Ronan wanted to show off his experience of killing Ebony Maw in seconds, and talk to Ancient One about the two unknown villains. However, he suddenly realized that something was wrong with the word. Wait, weekend? Ronan looked at Ancient One. Ancient One raised his eyebrows and said, yes, 2 days have passed. These 2 days, without you in Kamatage, many people told me that it's a lot quieter here. This sentence, like a bolt from the blue, hit Ronan's head all of a sudden. Who secretly reported it? Was it the king, or Mordo, or maybe this idea was just born, and Ronan threw it out because he thought of something more outrageous. 2 days have passed? What about the time when he was supposed to be teleported? Ronan had already made plans for this weekend. How could it be over just like that? The weekend is gone, and school will start tomorrow. For a moment, Ronan felt like the sky was falling. However, another voice reminded him not to rush the sky to fall, because he had more important things to do. I haven't finished my homework yet. Ronan's wailing spread throughout Kamatage. Tony Stark, I'm going to kill you. Now, Ronan finally knew why Tony Stark had to send Ronan on his last journey at the very end. It turned out that the root of the matter was here. Looking at Ronan's staggering and rapid pace, Guyi finally couldn't help laughing. But after a moment, she regained her serious face. She put her hand on her chest, and the Eye of Agamotto appeared again, and the time gem inside also emitted a faint light. 2 days. Ronan, it seems that all this is your calamity. Did the future that has been changed really happen? There is another update in the afternoon. Everyone has been saying that it is too little, so I will secretly add one for everyone. Today and tomorrow, I will post one more chapter each. I have 2 more chapters to add to my limited stock. I still have to keep stocking up, and this chapter is nearly 3,000 words long. Isn't that sincere enough? The 2 chapters together are almost 6,000 words, which is almost 1 chapter more than others update in a day. Considering my sincerity, please vote for me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 58 Author's Words, Must Read. Thank you all for your continued support. First of all, I want to say this. Of course, this is not a eunuch's speech. Don't get me wrong. After all, I'm still in the recommended position. There are 2 purposes for writing this. Let me talk about the update plan later. The follow-up will be some thanks and rewards. Let me talk about the plan first. Next week's recommendation will not be a park in the light novel channel, but a park with all the books of the same period in the entire site to select whether it can enter the next round. This can be said to be the most important moment for a book. So I hope that, if you are raising books in the next week, try not to raise books and read to the next page of the latest chapter. Friends with fast hand speed can even see how many people you have read. Of course, only the top 100 can see the ranking. This matter is really important to this book, and to me as a new author. I don't ask for fame or wealth with one book. I just want to realize the dream of Sanjiang last time. This is my dream, and I hope you can lend me a pair of wings, so that I can fly high and see the scenery of Sanjiang with all the great authors snickering. Let's talk about the rewards. I'm very grateful to many good friends for their awards. This really cost everyone money, and I'm very grateful. On the new book list, our highest ranking was 11th, and now it is 13th, just a little bit away from the top 10. Of course, this is also related to me as a newcomer. After all, the top 10 authors are either platinum or great gods, and there are several very powerful LV5 authors. There are even some new vests of some big guys, which are the advantages of old authors. As a new author, I didn't expect to reach this position. You know, when I reached the 11th place, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep all night. Hahaha, it's really a bit disappointing. But this is all thanks to everyone. It is because of everyone's help that I can achieve what I have today. Here I would like to thank you again. Thank you. The new book list will be off the list on the 26th or 27th at most, so you don't have to spend too much money on rewards. Leave it for everyone to subscribe to the books you like, or wait for this book to be put on the shelves, and everyone can support it. If there are free monthly tickets, you can give too. The more the better, hahaha. Next, it's the friends who have rewarded recently. I remember everyone's name. If there are mistakes or friends who are not displayed in the background, you can tell me in the comments area. I will add it in time. It is because of you that I'm here today. Thank you all. The following is a reward list. Thank you again. Thank you for the 500 points of reward from Yite Deote. Thank you for the 100 points of reward from the Determination of Evolution. Thank you for the 500 points of reward from the Chief Elder of the Sword Sect. Thank you for calling me the 9th Prince for 600 points. Thank you for the 100 points of reward from the book friend 201802041757014996. Thank you for the 100 points of reward from Ko Mengdandu and Zengchen. Thank you for the 100 points of reward from Endless Sting. Thanks to Ziai for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Wandering Around the Sane for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Music C for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Kingai Nonong for the 100 point reward. Thanks to I Want a Wife Without Cakes for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Liashudian for the 500 point reward. Thanks to Huang Tangai for the 1500 point reward. Thanks to LGAM for the 100 point reward. Questions Reading. Thanks to Pink Furry Rabbit 2500 for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Alex Bingfeng for the 100 point reward. Thanks to the Fish in the Pot for the 100 point reward. Questions Reading. Thanks to I for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Bookfriend 202106130742462220 for the 100 point reward. Thanks to Liu Outing for the 200 point reward. This is all the reward records in my backend, but I think there should be some missing, so I will tell you about it at the end. If a friend has given a reward, but it is not on the list, please tell me in the comment area, or in this chapter. I will add it in time. Finally, thank you again for your support. Thank you. Chapter 59. I'm not strong yet, but when I grow strong, things will change. Although it was 11 o'clock in the morning and the sun was high in the sky, Ronan would rather it was late at night. The reason was simple. The time in New York was 12 hours slower than that in Kamatage. In other words, it was 11 o'clock on Monday morning in Kamatage, and it was 11 o'clock on Sunday night in New York. Now, Ronan finally understood why he felt something was wrong when he returned to this universe. Because it was daytime when he left, but it was late at night when he came back. No matter how he thought about it, the time didn't match. Ronan never thought that he was the man who saved the world, and after returning, he would have to take another geography class. Of course, he had to finish his homework. Ronan had less than 9.5 hours before his class. In these 9.5 hours, Ronan needed to finish all his homework for the weekend. He regretted again why he didn't learn the trick from the trip to Aachen. Wouldn't it be much easier to divide hundreds of himself and complete the homework together? 5 hours later, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. The entire New York sanctuary fell into silence, and only Ronan's room was still brightly lit. Ronan swore, if anyone dares to say that America has less homework in the future, Ronan will definitely find a way to get back and slap him in the face. With the help of Wang's friendship, Ronan finally had only one last homework left until 4 in the morning. The price, of course, was a 3-layer royal burger meal. Ronan threw down the pen in his hand with a sense of relief and leaned back in his chair. He was almost exhausted. This is New York at 4 in the morning. A player who claimed to have seen Los Angeles at 4 in the morning was still sleeping with his wife in his arms. But Ronan couldn't sleep, and the remaining homework he had was his travel notes for this weekend. Ronan couldn't write for a while. He couldn't tell the teacher that he went to a parallel world this weekend and helped them save the Earth, right? In this case, I'm afraid the teacher would have to save the class rules first. So after thinking about it, Ronan only had one way left. Edit. When Ronan threw down his pen, a faint light appeared outside the window. The sun had begun to rise slowly from the east. A red sun, with an unstoppable momentum, slowly rose in the east. In the end, Ronan finally finished all his homework before class. Although most of the test questions were guessed, he finally finished it. Ronan sat limply on the chair, staring blankly at the sky in the distance. He, the Mage of Camotage, the candidate for the Supreme Sorcerer, the boy who defeated Thanos face to face, when has he ever suffered such grievances? If this matter were to be told to others, I'm afraid Tony Stark #2 would die of laughter on the spot. The man who fought Thanos head on, and fought wits and courage with the enemies of the future timeline actually has to make up homework. Ronan trembled all over when he thought about it. He was so angry. When will this student stand up? I'm not strong yet, but when I grow strong, there will be changes. Dang dang dang. Just as Ronan was lying dead, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Ronan shouted weakly towards the door. If he stayed up late to play games, Ronan would definitely still be energetic now. But if it's staying up late to do homework, that's another story. It looks like you finished your homework. The person who pushed the door open was none other than Ancient One. Seeing that it was Ancient One, Ronan sat up straight, but at the same time he was a little curious. Why did Ancient One come? Could it be that he came to supervise him doing his homework? Teacher, why are you here? Ancient One walked to Ronan's side and took a look at the homework on the table. Although most of the English letters on it were written in a flamboyant manner, they could basically be seen clearly. Some people always think that Ancient One is not good at modern scientific knowledge. But in fact, if Ancient One really wants to take a doctorate or something like that, it's basically a sure thing. The knowledge she understands is more vast than anyone can imagine. It looks like you finished your homework. Ancient One turned her gaze to Ronan again. Yeah, damn Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. One made me lose my weekend, and the other didn't finish my homework for me. Next time I see them, I will definitely give them a surprise that they will remember for the rest of their lives. Ronan has already written down the names of these two people in his little notebook. One is untrustworthy, and the other is secretly messing with him. The next time they meet, Ronan must give them a huge gift. Since you have finished writing, I will also tell you our good news. Guyi looked at Ronan with a smile, but Ronan felt a hint of ominous premonition from her smile. Why is this smile so familiar to him? It seems that he has seen it many times. Good news? Don't tell me. Today is actually Saturday. Today is Sunday. Ronan swallowed his saliva. Since he came back, he has only eaten one meal. The rest of the time was spent doing homework, regretting, doing homework, being angry, doing homework, and resting. He didn't even look at the time. No, the time is right. You also finished your homework within the specified time. Guyi shook his head and said. Hearing this, Ronan finally let go of his worries. If it was really the same as he said, Ronan would be furious. That's good. Then what's the good news you said, teacher? Ronan breathed a sigh of relief and continued to collapse on the chair. Anyway, no matter what, his efforts for the whole night were not in vain. That's enough. The good news is that I have asked for leave for you tomorrow. You have to go out with me. Guyi said the so-called good news. No problem, teacher. Wherever you say, we'll go. I don't have anything to do. Halfway through his words, Ronan suddenly jumped up from the chair. He looked at Guyi in disbelief. However, Guyi threw him a very determined look. Ask for leave. Ronan felt his heart was broken. Why? Why didn't you tell me in advance? He is still growing. Staying up late has a very important impact on growth. And where are you going? In the end, Ronan's thousands of words were only summed up in one sentence. I'm not strong yet, and when I grow strong, I will change. Of course, this sentence can only be said in the heart. Maybe he didn't notice Ronan's psychological changes, or maybe the Ancient One knew that Ronan was just joking. Therefore, the Ancient One didn't care so much. She just glanced at the sky outside the window. Let's go to Asgard. Asgard? Is it where Thor is? The legendary Asgard. It is said that there are many good things hidden in the treasure house. Teacher, haven't you been in contact with Asgard? What should I do? Ronan frowned. He knew Asgard and knew that the Ancient One had been in contact with there. But this time, why did the Ancient One take him with him? This is Odin's suggestion. He wants the future Lord of Asgard to meet the future Supreme Sorcerer. Chapter 60. I'm 16 now. I need to be more mature. Meet up. How to explain this reason? It is extremely powerful, but also extremely outrageous. Asgard, as the domain of the gods, governs the 9 realms, and the Earth is one of their subordinate planets. But the Earth is the only planet that has suffered so many disasters. Of course, compared to Asgard, which will be destroyed in the future, the Earth is still the safer one. The Lord of the 9 realms, meeting the guardian of the subordinate planet, did not use the word summon but meet up. Just from the wording, the Ancient One is not just a simple wizard. At least in some aspects, the two are equal. I won't go. I have already met the future Lord of Asgard. Ronan almost said the future Asgard will be gone. Although the Ancient One must know about this, it is different to say it out loud. Are you worried about encountering some unexpected troubles? The Ancient One looked at Ronan with a smile. She seemed to be hinting at something. Ronan was slightly stunned. He looked at the Ancient One. He didn't tell the Ancient One about his affairs in that universe. What did the Ancient One mean by saying this? Could it be that the Ancient One is so powerful that he can even observe things in other universes? Don't worry, I don't know what you've been through. But I can sense that, since you came back, you seem to be more cautious than before. The Ancient One smiled and shook his head, denying Ronan's idea. She didn't even need to ask, but she could guess it. I think it's better to be cautious. After all, you're already 16 years old. You have to be more mature. Ronan scratched his head. In fact, he had been thinking about how to tell the Ancient One about this. However, since the Ancient One mentioned this, Ronan really wanted to talk to her. However, before he could open his mouth, the Ancient One interrupted him. You don't have to tell me what happened to you. This is your experience and adventure. Similarly, you need to deal with these things yourself. This is a test for you, and it is also a necessary journey in your life. The Ancient One patted Ronan's shoulder and looked at the bright sky outside the window. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her eyes seemed to be looking in a faraway direction. What I can guarantee is, as long as I'm here, I will not let you face those dangers in this universe. To be honest, Ronan was really moved by what the Ancient One said. Although as the Supreme Sorcerer, the Ancient One's main responsibility is to protect the Earth and the mages of Kamataj. However, at least in the past 16 years that Ronan knew, he had never heard of anyone who had received a guarantee from the Ancient One. Ronan suddenly remembered what the woman said. He has always lived under the wings of the Ancient One, and has been able to grow up safely. It can be heard how jealous the woman is. TSK, what's wrong with that? He has this condition, so willful. In the end, Ronan agreed to the Ancient One in such a confused way. However, the Ancient One was still very considerate and let Ronan sleep for a while. It was not until noon, after lunch, that the Ancient One took Ronan to an open space. Teacher, how do we get there? Ronan glanced around, and it was obvious that the Ancient One had chosen this place on purpose. But, wasn't the Rainbow Bridge destroyed by Loki? Why do they still need to wait here? Originally they were going to pick us up, but the Rainbow Bridge was destroyed for some reason. So, we have to go over there. The Ancient One gently swiped the air twice, and a golden portal appeared in front of the two people. The classic basic spell of the mage, the Gate of Mysticism. On the other side of the door was Heimdall, who was guarding the Rainbow Bridge. He had a pair of eyes that patrolled the 9 realms, and was responsible for guarding the Rainbow Bridge, the only entrance to Asgard. The two people stepped through the portal, and walked into Asgard. Supreme Mage. Heimdall bowed slightly to show respect. Seeing the two people coming out, Heimdall did not show any surprise. It seems that the Ancient One often comes here. Hello Heimdall, long time no see. The Ancient One replied with a smile. Ronan on the side pulled the corner of his mouth, and the classic universe was speaking English. I thought he could speak some languages that Ronan didn't know, but Heimdall's proficient American English made communication without any obstacles. Who is this? Heimdall also found Ronan. This is my disciple, Ronan. He is also the next Supreme Sorcerer. Ancient One introduced Ronan. Hearing that he was the next supreme sorcerer, Heimdall nodded slightly and gestured to Ronan. Ronan smiled back, but his attention was on Heimdall's eyes. These eyes that can detect the 9 realms. Some people once suspected that his eyes were the so-called soul gems. But later it was proved that it was just his eyes that were powerful. Supreme Sorcerer, please move to the palace. Odin is already waiting there. Heimdall made a gesture of invitation, and 2 Asgard soldiers appeared next to him and saluted the 2 people. How to say it? Ronan, who saw this scene, always felt a little weird. These people were all warriors with countless blood on their hands, but when they returned to Asgard, they had to be as polite as a gentleman. It was very much like some upper-class gentlemen in the British Empire. Under the leadership of the 2 soldiers, the 2 crossed a bridge all the way and successfully arrived at the location of the hall. Standing on this bridge, you can see the scenery of the entire Asgard. In the end, it will become the life-saving straw for the survivors of Asgard. Entering Asgard, Odin sat on the throne in the center, quietly waiting for them. From this angle, it seems that Odin's status is higher. Respected Lord of Asgard, King of the Gods Odin. I greet you on behalf of Kamataj. Ancient One bowed slightly, as if saluting Odin. Ronan hurriedly followed Ancient One's actions and imitated him. Respected Supreme Sorcerer, Earth Guardian Ancient One. On behalf of Asgard, thank you for your greetings. At this time, Odin actually stood up from the chair and nodded as well. Just this one action can fully explain the relationship between the 2 people. Similarly, this also proves Ronan's previous speculation. If Ancient One is just the guardian of the earth, then Odin naturally cannot value Ancient One so much. Then the Ancient One in front of Ronan is very likely to be the spokesperson of Vishanti in the world. Only in this way will Odin value Ancient One so much. As for Ronan, he is just a dispensable little transparent. The so-called next Sorcerer Supreme is just a bigger title. Look at Thor, the so-called next king of the Asgard. Before he ascended the throne, he was just an ordinary thunder god. Oh no, the god of hammer. At least now, he is still a god of hammer. Master Ancient One, is this the heir you chose? It looks much better than my 2 troublesome sons. I just watched She-Hulk again, and found that in all the scenes where the king appeared, when using the Mystic Gate, he was wearing a hanging ring and hand gestures, so I was completely confused. Brothers all said that the king did not need hand gestures and hanging rings to do it, but in Marvel's TV series, it has always been shown that the king needs this thing, so I'm a little confused. However, there is good news. In the new week, we have come to the 6th place on the new book list. 6th place. This is all thanks to everyone. Thank you so much. Chapter 61. When you say life imprisonment, do you mean waiting for him to die of old age? What Ronan didn't expect was that, in addition to greeting each other, Odin and Ancient One's first topic was Ronan. Moreover, they even gave Ronan a taunting buff. The targets of the taunting were Thor, who was standing next to Odin, and Loki, who was already locked in prison. This old guy doesn't look like a good person. This thought flashed through Ronan's mind. No, compared to your 2 princes, I'm far behind. After all, the title of Thor is well known in the 9 realms, and Loki, the god of tricks, is also a well-known figure. Compared to them, I'm just a nobody. Ronan smiled and waved his hands. This taunting skill was useless to him. After all, he was an adult, and he knew the truth, that a tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Especially when he saw Thor's eyes that wanted to have a solo with Ronan. In Ronan's eyes, Thor is just a child now. It would be a loss of face to argue with a child. Sure enough, when Ronan said this, Thor's eyes also changed. At least the look of wanting to solo once was hidden. However, Odin glanced at his eldest son, especially seeing Thor's satisfied look. He couldn't help but sigh. Is Ronan scared? No, on the contrary. In Odin's opinion, this is the biggest difference between Ronan and Thor. If Thor is considered an earthling, he is actually much older than Ronan. However, the 2 people seem to be very different in terms of mental maturity. The younger one is more mature and stable. The older one, on the contrary, seems more reckless. In contrast, the difference between the 2 is obvious. Master Ancient One, you have taught a good disciple. Odin retracted his gaze without leaving a trace, and seemed to sigh. You are too kind. I have seen Prince Thor's strength on Earth. In time, he can definitely become a qualified king. Ancient One smiled, reflecting the unique humility of Oriental people to the fullest. Of course, what she said was not all compliments. After all, judging from the time to come, Thor will still mature little by little, from a child to a king who can stand on his own. But this someday may take a long time. Since you mentioned Midgard, I think I should give you an explanation. Loki contacted the Chirita people privately and invaded Midgard. This is his fault, and it is also my responsibility. Whether as a father, or as the king of the gods, I have a heavy responsibility. A flash of disappointment flashed in Odin's eyes. As the master of the 9 realms, his responsibility is to protect the 9 realms he leads. However, his son Loki actually contacted people from outside the domain, and invaded the earth under Asgard. He wanted to become the king on earth. No matter what, Odin cannot get rid of his responsibility. It seems that your excellency has already thought about the outcome. Ancient One looked at Odin with a smile. She neither blamed Odin or Loki, nor emphasized her identity as the guardian of the earth. But just this one sentence is enough to prove her attitude. If Odin's handling result is reasonable, then she will not object. But if it is unreasonable, that's another matter. Ronan stood aside and listened quietly to the conversation between the two big guys. In fact, he could understand the meaning of these words, but his identity was not enough to sit at this table for the time being. And if you want to sit at this table, in addition to your identity, you must also have the strength that matches your identity. Otherwise, Odin would not attach so much importance to the Ancient One. Of course, in order to give the people of Midgard a reasonable explanation, I decided to completely imprison Loki. He will be sentenced to life imprisonment, and he will not come out of prison until the moment he dies of old age. This is my explanation to Midgard and Kamataj. Life imprisonment. This is the last concession made by Odin. In fact, from Odin's words, you can hear his arrogance as the king of the gods. When telling Loki's crimes, he used the word explanation. But when it comes to Kamataj, he used explanation. In his eyes, it was impossible for the Earthlings to be on par with them. He only needed to give Kamataj a face. To be more precise, he had to give the Ancient One a face. Your Excellency's punishment is very reasonable. I agree on behalf of Kamataj. The Ancient One nodded slightly, although she also knew that the future would change. But by that time, it would be time for someone else to face it. Ronan on the side opened his mouth. Loki is back. But soon, Ronan also reacted. According to the scene Ronan saw, Loki was captured by the Time Management Bureau, and the process was likely to be as described in the plot. Then, what about the part where the space stone was lost and Loki escaped? Normally, Thor would have a memory. Young wizard, you seem to have something to say. Odin, who was sitting in his seat, saw the change in Ronan's expression. His perception was still very sharp, but not on his two sons. Nothing, it's just that I felt the power of the cosmic cube where Loki was captured. So I thought there was something wrong in the middle. Ronan remained calm and his heart was not beating. Can the things of scholars be called lying? That's called thick black studies. Your perception is very sharp, and there was indeed something wrong in the middle. Tony Stark suddenly had a heart problem, which caused chaos at the time. In this chaos, Loki left with the cosmic cube. At this time, Thor appeared and restored the situation at that time. Loki slipped away. This plot seems a bit wrong. Normally, shouldn't the Time Management Bureau appear and eliminate the abnormal Loki and restore the normal timeline after it appears? This is the proper ending. The reason why Ronan took the space gem was to test this. If the Time Management Bureau restores the normal timeline, the space gem in his hand will disappear. But now it seems that Ronan is extremely regretful at this moment. As soon as he came back, he was busy making up his homework and even forgot to check whether the cosmic cube was still there. If I understand correctly, the so-called life imprisonment, does it mean waiting for him to die of old age outside? It must be said that Ronan has always been the industry leader in terms of heartbreaking. After this big silencing spell, the entire Asgard was directly quiet. Ronan could even say that he could replace a certain singer named Lynn and become the new generation of silencer. Asgard will always be looking for Loki until one day we find him and take him back to Asgard. Chapter 62. You understand punishment. Odin's voice resounded throughout the palace. It was resounding and unquestionable. Well, the last 4 words were meant for Ronan to hear. Ronan curled his lips in his heart. If he didn't question it, then he didn't question it. What's the big deal? For ordinary people like Ronan, it doesn't matter if they say the words of gods. More importantly, Asgard has good weather, and the people are in favor. Is it necessary for you, a little wizard, to worry about the country and the people? Besides, there are so many Asgardians in the gods' domain, and none of them objected. Don't they know more about their own affairs than you? At first glance, Ronan is a little black. That must be, as the god king of Asgard, you must understand punishment. As he said, Ronan also raised a thumb. The classic icon lighting segment. Although he didn't win, he didn't lose in the icon lighting part. Obviously, as the god king, Odin didn't hear the real meaning of Ronan's words at all. In his life, he had heard flattery and upright rebuttal. But he was still a little bit short of the weirdness. Thor, who had lived on Earth for a while, always felt that something was wrong with Ronan's words. Especially his action. On Earth, this action was undoubtedly an expression of appreciation. But combined with what Ronan said, Thor's brain was a little confused. Master Ancient One, because of the mistake of our Asgard this time, the damage caused to the Earth, I express my apologies again. As the Lord of the Nine Realms, you indulged your son to do such a thing. Except for not catching Loki, Odin was quite sincere in other aspects. At least as a god king, he could bend down to apologize, which surprised Ronan. This is a big shot. As the head of a country, such a big boss, he didn't have the slightest intention of covering up his mistakes, and actually apologized to Ancient One. Ronan was very surprised. He had never seen such a head of a country who could apologize. What is the Sin Edict? It's been out of date for so many years, I didn't expect it to still exist in Asgard. As the supreme sorcerer of Kamataj, I accept the apology from Asgard. Guyi nodded, and this was very artistic. He only said that he accepted the apology from Asgard, not that he accepted Odin's apology. This emotional intelligence. TSK. Ronan felt that he still had many years to learn. Odin opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something else, but he glanced at Thor's position and whispered, Thor, take this wizard to Asgard for a walk. You are also allowed to visit the treasure house of Asgard. Don't say that we in Asgard don't have the art of hospitality. Hearing this, Ronan immediately understood. This is not a manifestation of the art of hospitality, it's just to deliberately send them away and not let them hear some things. But Ronan didn't care. It was better not to hear some things. Because not telling him means that he doesn't need to do anything about it. Then he will be so relaxed. Let Ronan stay here. It's time for him to know some things. However, what Ronan didn't expect was that Ancient One asked Ronan to stay. Isn't this embarrassing? Thor, who had already walked down, was neither forward nor backward, and froze in place for a while. Who am I? Where am I? And what should I do? Seeing this, he also understood what Odin meant. Unexpectedly, his mind began to work. Then as the next god king of Asgard, Thor, you should listen to it too. Odin glanced at Ancient One, and calmly kept Thor. Since you have confidence in your disciple, I also have confidence in my son. Inexplicable comparison. Hearing this, Thor looked at Odin in surprise. All along, he only needed to obey Odin's orders, but now Odin seems to have a new idea. So, Thor simply stood beside Ronan. Ronan calmly moved aside for Thor's decision. This action made Thor frown. What, is there something on him? It's not that there is something on him. It's just that Ronan, who is less than 1.8 meters tall, looks a little weak when standing next to him. Well, only a little bit. And Ronan is only 16 years old. It's normal for boys to develop later. Besides, Thor's height can crush a group of adults, let alone Ronan, a child. So Ronan is not inferior at all. Well, not inferior at all. Who knows? Thor frowned, thought for a second, and actually moved a step over here. Ronan lowered his head and moved to the side without saying a word. Finally, he looked at Thor. The meaning is very clear. I have given you enough face. Don't push it. Who would have thought that when seeing Ronan's action, Thor actually moved another step over here, just stopping at a distance of less than 5 centimeters from Ronan. At this distance, it is just right to compare the height and physical fitness of the two people from the front, back, left and right. More importantly, he even turned his hammer. What do you mean, brother? Ronan took a deep breath and glared at Thor. Enough. This is the last time I will let you. If you dare to follow me again, I will beat you. After expressing all this information with his eyes, Ronan took another step to the side. This is his last bottom line. However, this time, Thor not only followed him again, but also bent down and glanced at Ronan from the side. That's right, he bent down. This is simply the biggest insult to Ronan. Ronan couldn't bear it anymore and suddenly raised his head, wanting to argue with Thor. Are you done? Who the hell wants to stick to a tough guy like you? Are you? However, before he could say anything, Ronan felt an unprecedented embarrassment. Because it might be that the steps they took just now were a little too big. The two people actually moved from the center of the hall to the far left side. The Asgard soldier standing on the left was only a dozen centimeters away. The soldiers next to them looked at the two people curiously. Is this some kind of activity unique to Earth? To show closeness? Or something else? At this moment, Ronan had an urge to die. He had been roaming the universe for many years, and he had always been the one who made others die socially, and no one had ever made him die socially. This was his first miss. However, although social death is social death, Ronan should not cough. He is thick-skinned. He recovered quickly from this matter. He even smiled and waved at the soldier on the left. I can't help it. Maybe I feel too secure, and I will unconsciously attract some delicate girls. Oh, yes. Sometimes I will attract some sissy guys. But I'm used to it. Ha 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 ha. It's the 8th place. The 8th place on the new book list. I really didn't expect that it would be stable at the 8th place on the new book list. I thought it would fall down. It's all thanks to all the readers. Every monthly ticket, every follow-up reading, and every reward from you have put me in the top 10 of the new book list. Even some great gods and platinum authors have been surpassed, which really makes me feel terrified. I won't say more. I will work hard to write and save manuscripts. We will definitely live up to your expectations. Go go go. Chapter 63 Thor's Dark History. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This time, it was Thor's turn to glare at Ronan. Who are you calling a sissy? I'm a real man. Thor threw the hammer into Ronan's arms and showed off his strong muscles. He also had a very small trick. When he showed the trick, his head was looking down. It was obvious that this person was playing tricks, and he dared to conclude that Ronan would definitely lie on the ground. However, there was no trace of Ronan on the ground. Thor looked around in surprise, and Ronan was gone. I don't know when his hammer fell in front of Frigga, and Ronan was standing next to the hammer and whistling. While whistling, Ronan winked at Frigga. Look at your good son. He wants to kill me. Frigga looked at Ronan with a smile. She really liked this child. Smart children are often spoiled by the older generation. At Frigga's age, she can almost be Ronan's great-great-great-great-grandmother. How many generations have passed? Hey, how do you know there's something wrong with my hammer? Thor was straightforward. This was the thing he couldn't figure out the most. On Earth, the Avengers tried to lift the hammer one by one. Except for Steve Rogers, who moved a little bit. No one else could move it. Moreover, he had done many pranks with the hammer. But how did Ronan know? Is this difficult? A few years ago, the teacher noticed that the rainbow bridge suddenly opened, so he asked me to find out. At that time, I only saw a man in a tights falling from the sky. He was almost hit by a car. Oh, by the way, I also recorded the video at that time. If you need it, I can also help you recall it. Ronan took out his mobile phone and showed it to Thor. That was almost the most embarrassing moment in Thor's life. Oh, no, there will be more embarrassing moments later. Really? Did you save these videos? Thor didn't say anything, but Frigga, who was standing next to Ronan, seemed a little surprised. Yes, they are all in this phone. Do you want to see them? Ronan skillfully took out a folder from his hand and found one of the videos. Unfortunately, the phone back then did not have a very high definition, but it was enough to see Thor's face clearly. Oh my god. I also want to see how Thor lives on Earth. Frigga was like a mother who discovered her child's dark history. She was so excited that she could hardly hide it. Ronan also cooperated very well and directly found the video called Freefall and opened it and handed it to Frigga. The first part of the video was the scene of Thor falling from the sky. Boom. Especially the sound of being hit by a car, which was particularly loud. Oh. Is this girl your girlfriend in the atrium? She looks pretty. Frigga saw Jane Foster rushing out at a glance. When praising the other person for being beautiful, wasn't it also praising her son for having good taste? I don't know if Ronan did it on purpose or what happened. The next second, the camera turned, and it turned into a scene of Thor and Jane Foster kissing. Especially when she saw Thor's immersive French kiss, Frigga's face clearly showed an auntie's smile. Wow. It seems that my son has really grown up. Frigga looked at Thor meaningfully, and everything was self-evident. However, Odin on the side was already unhappy. As the god of thunder of Asgard and the next master of Asgard, he actually fell in love with a woman from the courtyard. This was something he could not tolerate. The lifespan of both parties was hundreds of times different, which meant that they were destined not to have a good ending. Mom. Thor finally couldn't help it. He walked forward quickly and snatched Ronan's mobile phone from Frigga. There was a crisp sound, and Ronan's mobile phone was crushed into pieces by his hands. As the pieces fell to the ground, Thor showed a relieved expression. His dark history was finally eliminated. Thor, you are very rude. Why do you want to destroy other people's things? Seeing Thor's behavior, Frigga was obviously a little unhappy. I haven't seen enough of my daughter-in-law. Why did you crush the phone? Odin was beside her, so she couldn't say this directly, so she found an excuse. Mom. Thor looked at Frigga helplessly. He could contradict his father, but he couldn't say these words to his mother. So, he could only use a tone that was almost begging. It's okay, I'm a more careful person. I have backups for things like this. If you want to see it, I'll send another copy up another day. It's just this phone. Ronan looked at his phone with regret. In fact, he was already very excited. He had wanted to change this phone for a long time, but he couldn't save money to buy a new one. Now, Thor has given him a big assist. He can get a new phone, and it's very likely to be free. Thor. At this time, Odin, who had been silent for a long time, finally spoke. His words interrupted this farce. Thor lowered his head quickly and didn't dare to say anything more. The mages of Kamataj are our friends. They are guarding the atrium just like us. So, you must respect our friends. Odin's words seemed to be addressed to Thor, but also to the Ancient One. Of course, it could also be addressed to Ronan. Yes, father. Thor listened to the reprimand obediently. After all, he has grown up a bit in recent years. At least he won't talk back in front of outsiders. Okay, all of you go down. Odin waved his hand at the soldiers on both sides, because they couldn't listen to the next words. As the soldiers left one by one, the farce came to an end temporarily, and the conversation finally returned to the topic. Supreme Sorcerer, in a short while, the 9 realms will be on the same line. At that time, a strange scene will also appear in the atrium. If there is a situation, please help more. Odin talked about something that was not big or small. Ronan quietly returned to the back of the Ancient One, but he was thinking about something else. If it was just a matter of the 9 realms being on the same line, Odin would not send Ronan and Thor away. After all, Thor also knew about this. So, this is just an appetizer, and the main course is probably still to come. Ronan will be responsible for handling this matter. If he can't handle it, I will take action. Ancient One nodded, and she had begun to push Ronan to the forefront. Odin glanced at Ronan, and did not object. No objection, that means agreement. So, Odin looked at his son, Thor Odinson. He was not sure what his reaction would be when he knew about this in his current state. But, Odin still made up his mind. Ancient One was confident in letting a 16-year-old child listen to this, so why couldn't his 100-year-old son do the same? He had to believe in his son. In addition, there is one more thing that Master Ancient One should know. In ancient legends, Asgard will one day usher in the twilight of the gods. And now, I have a hunch that the legend is approaching. Chapter 64. A mobile phone can be exchanged for Asgard's treasure? Ragnarok. Ronan blinked. He knew this very well. He thought it was a big deal. Wasn't it just Hela showing up and destroying the whole of Asgard? Seriously, isn't this still several years away? How come? Oh, for these gods, several years is about the same as a few months for humans, right? Ragnarok is just a legend after all. Although it exists on the timeline, it can be changed. Facing Odin, the Ancient One did not hide anything about the future. After all, these two people can predict the future, but they seem to be a little different from each other. Thor, who was listening on the side, was dumbfounded. Father, what is Ragnarok? Why have I never heard of this? Thor seemed extremely excited. Ragnarok, just hearing this word, it's not a good word. Thor, listen to me. Odin looked at the extremely excited Thor, then looked at the extremely calm Ronan, and couldn't help but sigh. Why can't his son be more calm? Even though this matter concerns Asgard, this performance is indeed far from enough. However, little did he know that at this moment, Ronan was thinking about what kind of mobile phone he would change to next. It must be the latest model, with a large and clear screen, and it must show all those people's embarrassing photos clearly, especially Thor's. He crushed his mobile phone, and he must pay the price. First give him 100 photos of social death, then the whole luxury package. This matter originated from an ancient legend, and it is also something that only every god king can know. But now that things have come to this, Ragnarok is about to come, and I have to do this. I hope you can help. Odin looked at the Ancient One. However, the Ancient One shook his head again. I'm sorry, the mission of the Supreme Sorcerer is not allowed to participate in the fight outside the Earth. Our duty is to protect the safety of the Earth, and prevent it from being invaded by external forces. If we act rashly, it will inevitably bring more disasters to the Earth. The Ancient One did not hesitate at all, and directly rejected Odin's words for help. She was right. The Supreme Sorcerer is indeed very powerful, but he is only powerful as an individual. Her duty is to protect the safety of the Earth. If she participates in the fight outside the Earth, it will certainly lead to some unnecessary dangers. It would be fine if she eliminated the enemies on the spot, but what if some of them left? Will the remaining people bring more disasters to the Earth? Therefore, except for the enemies who invaded the Earth, the Supreme Sorcerer generally would not take action. Even as long as humans can solve it, she would choose to be a transparent person. Well, I understand your difficulties. Odin did not continue to say anything more. He could also understand the difficulties of the Ancient One. After all, in his eyes, Midgard was still too fragile. Those enemies, the warriors of Asgard, might be able to confront them head on. But if they met humans, they would be crushed. Father, can't we take the initiative to solve it? Do we have to wait passively until that day comes? Thor couldn't help it anymore. Because from what Odin said, this matter seemed to be very serious. Odin, who has always been very proud, actually asked for help. This is a very rare thing. Ronan does have a way, but he knows that Odin will never adopt his method. It's nothing more than transferring all the civilians of Asgard to a safe planet now. However, with Odin's pride, I'm afraid he won't allow this to happen. Of course, the people of Asgard will not accept this. Thor, you are not the God King now, so there are some things you don't understand. This prophecy does not have an exact time. As the God King, I can only feel it vaguely. Odin sighed, but he didn't tell the truth. Whether it is Odin or the Ancient One, they must know when that day is. However, once the exact date is said, there will be two results. Either the people of Asgard will be demoralized and live in fear every day, unable to extricate themselves, or they will prepare for war with all their heart and soul until that day comes. Either way, it is not what Odin wants. Odin's words also made Thor, who was full of reluctance, speechless. If we don't even know the specific date, how can we avoid it early? Thor, since you know about this, you should keep it in your heart. I won't allow you to tell anyone else. Odin's face was a little serious. Thor nodded subconsciously, not knowing what to say. Then, Odin looked at Ronan. Master Ronan, Thor damaged your phone, and we need to compensate you according to reason. So, I will allow you to choose a treasure from the treasure house of Asgard. It's Thor's compensation to you. After hearing what Odin said, Ronan was completely dumbfounded. No way. A mobile phone for a treasure from Asgard? Did he hear it right? Although, in Hela's eyes, most of the things in the treasure house of Asgard are not worthy of her. and there are also many things in it that are imitations. But for Ronan, it is something that can only be encountered by chance. Not bad, right? I still have more than a dozen mobile phones. Otherwise, wait for me, I will buy it now. Of course, Ronan could only say this in his heart. It doesn't matter, as long as you can take it away. Odin smiled and glanced at Thor. Since it was Thor's fault, let him take you to choose. It's just right to let him take you around Asgard, which is also our Asgard's way of hospitality. Thor was stunned when his name was suddenly called, and he turned his eyes to Ronan. For some reason, Ronan sensed a hint of ominous breath from his eyes. You are not right. What about him? Can he? He is the disciple of the Supreme Sorcerer, but he is not the Supreme Sorcerer, and he will not violate your rules. Thor suddenly said this. His eyes passed Ronan, and looked at the Ancient One on the side. Obviously, he was asking the Ancient One this question. Kyoudao Masai. Pause for a moment, I have something to say. Ronan stretched out his hand, intending to interrupt what Thor was going to say next. Sure enough, his premonition was right. Thor, this guy, really doesn't look like a good silver. He actually wants to vote for Ronan for nothing. I think that as a candidate for the Supreme Sorcerer, I need to abide by the Supreme Sorcerer's rules from now on. Take Kamataj as your home and always consider Kamataj. The teacher's words are my words, and the rules the teacher follows are the rules I must follow. So I'm sorry, Thor, I really want to help you, but I can't do anything. You want me to help you, but you want to vote for me for free. Where is the good thing? You can help me, but you have to pay more. Requesting monthly votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 65 Moral kidnapping is useless, but you can pay protection money. Ronan came to Asgard for only 3 things. Rejection, rejection, or damn rejection. Of course, taking treasures from the Asgard treasury is an exception. No good thing. Who? Oh no. Brother, you have to face Hela, the goddess of death. Do you understand? Not to mention how strong she is, but in the final analysis, this is just your family's family affair. The eldest daughter was supposed to inherit the throne, but because she disagreed with her father on governing the country, she was hunted down by her father and directly sent to the Cold Palace. The eldest son and the second son who grew up later made a family drama. In the end, the second son drove his father off the throne and deprived him of his divine power. This gave Hela the opportunity to lift the seal. In the end, you beat me, I beat you, and then Hela and the eternal fire named Surtur died together. What a wonderful ending. You just lost your home, but those 2 people died together. Thinking of this, Ronan had countless complaints to vomit. First of all, Hela, whose nickname is so arrogant, whose strength is so strong, and whose figure is so, actually ended up with such a dramatic ending. Think about it, even Ronan feels that it is too much. Okay. More importantly, Loki is no longer here. Logically speaking, there is no source for the Ragnarok in the plot. So why does Ragnarok still exist? This made Ronan think of another thing. Just from the appearance of Peter Parker, the time he is in does not seem to be the main universe. So is it possible that some plots will be different? For example, Hela in Ragnarok is not only resurrected, but also not dead. You know, the place where Hela is sealed is the Earth. Thinking of this, Odin is really shrewd. Because he knows that once Hela is really resurrected successfully and cannot be stopped, then the Ancient One must also take action. After all, as the place where she is sealed, Hela will never allow the Earth to exist because it is her shame. At that time, the Ancient One, as the guardian of the Earth, must also come forward to compete with Hela. No wonder Odin was rejected before, but he didn't show any dissatisfaction. After all, if they solved Hela, it didn't matter whether the Ancient One came or not. If they couldn't solve Hela, the Ancient One would have to take action sooner or later. Damn it. Ronan couldn't help but burst out with a swear word. He really underestimated these so-called gods. After living for so many years, they are really good at playing conspiracies and tricks. So, Ronan still has to beg Thor and others to solve Hela and prevent her from harming the earth? Thinking of this, Ronan couldn't help but look at Odin on the throne. I don't know if it was a coincidence or something. He found that Odin was also looking at him. Okay, you old boy. Ronan couldn't help rolling his eyes. So, a new idea was born in Ronan's mind. Since it is destined to be impossible to escape, it is better to make some extra money and never let Odin, the old boy, get what he wants. Then, Ronan has only one goal at this moment. Odin seemed to see through Ronan's inner thoughts, and his expression was a little complicated. You said that Ancient One could see through his thoughts, and Odin would not feel anything. After all, they are all 1,000-year-old foxes, and it is normal to see through each other's thoughts. However, what surprised Odin was that the little fox in front of him seemed to see through his purpose. This is not normal. This made Odin think of his two sons. Why is the gap so big? As a friend of Asgard, are you going to stand idly by when Asgard is in danger? I have also fought for the earth, and I have made all efforts, and I have also violated the rules of Asgard. Why can't you? Thor was obviously not satisfied with Ronan's answer. You? Playing moral kidnapping, right? Ronan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that Thor, a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, would also play moral kidnapping. He used to think that people like him who are shameless and thick-skinned like to play this game. I didn't expect that you, Thor, a god with thick eyebrows and big eyes, would also betray ***. Well, Ronan took the initiative to block the keywords himself. Let's talk about it. Is there a possibility? I say it's possible. Your so-called war for the earth is first of all because of Asgard's responsibility. Okay, let's put this responsibility aside for now. After all, it seems that I'm a bit morally kidnapped. Then was the earth's crisis caused by your brother? Since it was caused by your brother, there is no problem for you, as the elder brother, to clean up his mess, right? Ronan's mouth was like a machine gun, directly shooting Thor into a sieve. As I said before, Ronan has never lost when it comes to talking. In fact, it's the same as what I said to him. It's all your family's mess. If you don't solve it yourself, do you still need to rely on outsiders? This for a moment, Thor couldn't find anything to refute. He couldn't refute it either, because what Ronan said was true. It was Loki who caused the disaster on the earth, and it was Thor who was responsible for cleaning up the mess. Thinking about it this way, it must be Asgard's responsibility. Okay Ronan, don't embarrass Prince Thor anymore. At this time, the silent Ancient One spoke. Hearing this, Ronan curled his lips and swallowed the more heartbreaking words that were about to be said. For the sake of Teacher Guyi, I will spare you today. Otherwise, I must let you see what it means to be the best mouth in the universe. God King, although I cannot break the rules of the Supreme Sorcerer, I can guarantee one thing. If Asgard encounters any crisis in the future, you can evacuate to Earth. Kamataj will guarantee your safety. Guyi has put the final word on this matter. It's okay for you to fight, but we Kamataj will not participate. If you want to retreat to Earth, you can, and if there are more pursuers, we can take action. This is also the greatest sincerity of Guyi. Teacher, this kind of thing that has no benefits, should we think about it again? Ronan inadvertently raised the voice of the three words no benefits slightly. He was not hinting at anyone, he just wanted to tell the Asgardians present. It's okay to want to take refuge on Earth. You have to pay protection fees, commonly known as ad money. And Ronan's words that were said inadvertently also happened to reach Odin's ears. Not only was Odin not angry, but a smile appeared on his face. They don't have much in Asgard, but they are rich. After all, they fought for so many years, and basically all the treasures in various places were taken into their pockets. So money is nothing to them. In this case, thank you for the kindness of Master Ancient One. We need to buy a place to stay on Earth, and it is also convenient to hide our identities. So, I'm going to trouble you with this matter. Chapter 66 Asgard's Treasure House. Wow. Ronan never thought that Odin, this old guy, would be so sensible. He is said to be an old fox. It seems that he is paying protection fees to Kamataj. Oh no, to the Ancient One. I don't know if the Ancient One will be interested in this protection fee. In that case, let Ronan do this. He will definitely find a good place for you. The Ancient One did not refuse, but just handed the task to Ronan. Ronan was immediately refreshed. Teacher, you understand me too well. No one knows how to reimburse better than me. No, how to live more comfortably. Don't worry, God King, I will take care of this. I will definitely find you a place with a comfortable environment and beautiful scenery. Ronan patted his chest and agreed. Although giving money does not necessarily mean that you are the boss, giving money means respecting me, so I will respect you. Respect is mutual. Are you sure it's not for money? Thor quietly walked to Ronan's side and said faintly. He had said so much with all his heart just now, but it was not as good as what Odin said. He felt uncomfortable just thinking about it. Ronan glanced at Thor and took a step away from him without leaving a trace. Money is just a thing outside of the body. Although it can't help you resist the so-called Ragnarok, as an ally, it can provide you with a stable rear base. Don't worry about the battle, I will support you behind. Ronan patted Thor on the shoulder. It must be pointed out that he did not tiptoe. Odin just smiled at Ronan's statement. He waved his hand and a key-like thing fell into Thor's hand. Take our ally to choose something suitable for him. It's considered as an apology from Asgard. Thor looked at Odin, then at the key, and finally at Ronan. His expression was very unnatural. What do you mean, brother? Ronan couldn't accept Thor's expression. You crushed my mobile phone that has been with me for several years. What else do you want? Do you think it's just a mobile phone? No, it's the best partner that accompanied Ronan on his growth path. You guys are lucky to exchange a mere rubbish treasure for my best partner. Following Thor out of the hall, the two of them walked around the various corridors of Asgard, and Ronan also saw the unique scenery of Asgard. I have to say that the scenery of Asgard is really good. The bridge they crossed before was like a transparent bridge, and you can see what is going on below. In many halls they passed by, there are still many Asgardian warriors drinking and having fun. It can be seen that the 5,000 years of life force forced them to waste it like this. Otherwise, this situation would not have happened. This is the best welcome ceremony in our Asgard. I can take you to experience it, as long as you promise to do me a small favor. Seeing that Ronan's attention was on those trembling things, Thor put his arm around Ronan's shoulders. He is tempting Ronan. Humph. Thor really underestimated Ronan. Would Ronan be the kind of person who would be tempted so easily? Doesn't Thor know that Ronan has a bottom line? You tell me first. Ronan's eyes rolled, and his bottom line was still very flexible. Anyway, everyone has a bottom line, and there is nothing wrong with being flexible. As long as you help me, however. Before Thor finished speaking, Ronan interrupted him first. Okay, I promise you. Ronan's sudden words made Thor couldn't help but be stunned. What did I say and you agreed? Why do you feel that your words are so perfunctory? Isn't it to help you take care of Jane Foster? Although she is far away in the UK, I can find a way through my teacher to get her back to the United States. I can help you take care of her then. There won't be anything more important than your girlfriend, right? Ronan looked at Thor strangely and asked a deep question from the soul. What you said is right, but... Thor was very hesitant, but his words were interrupted by Ronan again. Yes, that's fine. We agreed that I will take good care of you. Don't worry, I will take care of your wife. Okay, let's go to the treasury. I have been wanting to open my eyes for a long time. After saying that, Ronan patted Thor's shoulder and walked straight ahead. Thor wanted to open his mouth several times, but he only saw Ronan's back. He didn't want to say this. However, he felt that what Ronan said seemed to be right. After all, Jane Foster was alone on Earth and might be in danger. He was having trouble in Asgard, so it was okay to think about it. Wait for me, you are going the wrong way, go this way. Thor's shouting stopped Ronan's footsteps. Ronan's expression did not change. He turned around very calmly and said, I know, I just look over here. I found that the scenery here is really good. As he said that, Ronan began to walk back step by step. Thor's face was full of strange expressions. Because the place Ronan saw was the resting place of the Valkyries. Did Ronan see something he shouldn't have? After walking for more than 10 minutes, the two finally arrived at the Asgard treasury. After confirming with the guards, the two verified their identities and the key Thor had obtained, and the guards let them in. This is a basement, almost the same as the one Hela entered. When Ronan walked into the treasury, he was dumbfounded, because he saw an extremely rare thing, the Sphere of Igmoto. This sphere is a treasure passed down from generation to generation by the Supreme Sorcerer. It can predict dangers in the universe and the source of magic in advance. If Ronan guessed correctly, Odin's foreboding of Ragnarok may also be due to this thing. Wow, I want it. But the next item attracted Ronan's attention again. The life card. This thing comes from the disappeared civilization Atlantis on the continent. Legend has it that this thing can make the body of ordinary humans evolve until it evolves into the highest level of life. Wow. I don't want it. Ronan rejected this choice immediately. The reason is very simple, because he can be sure that this thing is fake. According to the records of Kamataj, the life card did not disappear with Atlantis, but it is absolutely impossible for it to stay in the 9 realms, because it was taken away by creatures of higher dimensions. It is said that the person was evolved by the life card. Then, Ronan looked at the next one. The replica of the Infinity Gauntlet. This is also what Ronan wants most. Please give me a monthly ticket, please give me a recommendation ticket. Chapter 67 Ronan, share my friend's worries. Although Ronan wanted this replica of the Infinity Gauntlet very much, he still had some concerns in his heart. The reason was simple. Could the replica use the power of the Infinity Stones? No. To be more precise, could the Infinity Gauntlet allow the wearer to use the Infinity Stones without much cost? Throughout the Marvel movies, there were only a handful of people who could use the Infinity Stones. Thanos was one, Loki was one, and Ronan and other Supreme Sorcerers and Quasi-Supreme Sorcerers of Kamataj. Among them, except for Thanos, both Loki and Ronan used a single gem. The former belonged to God, and the latter had unique spell support. So when they used it, they could resist the side effects of the Infinity Stones. That's right, don't think that there are no side effects when using the Infinity Stones. Not only that, but they are also very large. Ronan had used the Time Stone before, but it was only under the unique spell of Kamataj that he could use it. As for other gems, he couldn't use them either. This is why Ronan wanted this replica of the Infinity Gauntlet. But Ronan also had concerns. You know, before, Tony Stark in Avengers 4 created an Infinity Gauntlet. But from the effect, it can only snap fingers. Ronan saw with his own eyes that when Thanos fought with Captain Marvel, Thanos' right hand wearing the Infinity Gauntlet actually maintained a 50-50 strength with Captain Marvel. You know, there is a power gem on the Infinity Gauntlet. In the end, Thanos could only take the power gem out of the replica Infinity Gauntlet and punch Captain Marvel away. But the real Infinity Gauntlet does not need it. Whether it is Thanos on the almost destroyed Titan, facing Tony Stark and Strange, not only did he restore the scene at that time with the reality gem, but he even used the gem repeatedly in the battle. Not once was it taken out of the Infinity Gauntlet and used again. Or on Earth, after Vision was killed by Scarlet Witch, Thanos still just waved his hand and turned back time to restore the destroyed Mind Gem. From this, we can see how big the gap between the imitation and the original is. If it can only snap fingers, Ronan has no use for this Infinity Gauntlet. After all, if he snapped his fingers, he would have to pay with his life. Ronan was not a fool. So, this was why Ronan hesitated. By the way, can your Infinity Gauntlet be used? Ronan looked at Thor. Since he was not sure, he would ask someone who knew. Well, I don't know about this either. But I heard from my father that the thing has been here for many years. It is said to be a replica, right? Thor took a look at the Infinity Gauntlet. He didn't know how much fear this thing would bring him in the future. You don't know either. Ronan couldn't help but curl his lips and suddenly felt disgusted in his heart. If he chose this uncertain thing, what if it was useless again? Wouldn't he lose a lot? So, Ronan fell into hesitation. But, I heard from my father before that there seemed to be a stone on this gauntlet back then. But that stone was hidden by him later. Thor gave a new clue. Huh. Wait. Hearing this, Ronan couldn't help but shudder. When he found this gauntlet, there was still a stone on it? Doesn't that mean that this glove has a high probability of having used the Infinity Stones? Is there a possibility that this imitation can use the power of the Infinity Stones, but can't snap fingers? If so, it almost perfectly meets Ronan's requirements. I have an idea. Can I take this thing back and try it out first? If I can use it, I'll stay. Next time you go to Earth, bring that thing with me. If I can't use it, we can exchange it. Ronan pointed to the sphere of egg motor. He once tried to use a time stone to observe his future. Unfortunately, he couldn't see anything. In addition, after he went to the parallel world, he was always troubled by inexplicable people. Therefore, the sphere of egg motor, which can predict danger and identify magic, is Ronan's best choice. If there is danger, I will ambush him. Well, this Thor really started to use his brain. According to his idea, he wanted to make a condition to Ronan through this matter. The condition was nothing else, just to let Ronan help them during the so-called Ragnarok. However, as the eldest son of the God King Odin and the next God King of Asgard, he felt that he couldn't bring himself to do that. A god went to ask a mortal. He felt ashamed. And Ronan was so smart that he saw Thor's thoughts at a glance. At first, he really didn't want to participate in this war. After all, no one knew how strong Hela was. He only knew that Thor, who had fully awakened the power of Thor, could only be like a little chicken in front of her. He had no power to fight back, just because you were too weak. So, according to Ronan's idea, he couldn't be stupid enough to take risks. But when he saw the things in the treasure house in front of him, although there might be some imitations in it, but too tempting. Isn't it a pity that so many things will be destroyed with Asgard? They may also want a stable life, and don't want to suffer the hardships of war. So, Ronan, who listened to their voices, decided to save them from the water and fire. While Asgard was destroyed, Ronan rescued them and placed them in a safe place. After all, there is only one space gem and the tyrant's butcher knife in Ronan's treasure house, and the two treasures seem a little lonely. It would be nice to have a few more friends to accompany them. I know what you want to say. Although I can't participate in the war, as a friend, I can promise you one thing. Ronan patted his chest with a righteous look, and he looked like he was willing to sacrifice himself. Thor was stunned and looked at Ronan with some confusion. At that time, I can bring the civilians of Asgard to Earth through the secret door. As Thor and a warrior of Asgard, you can fight for Asgard, but the civilians are always innocent. So, as a peace envoy on Earth, I can help you save the elderly and children. After all, they are innocent. Ronan patted Thor's shoulder, looking like he was thinking about you. Hearing this, Thor was also deeply moved. What a good friend. Without any worries, he can devote himself to the battle and fight to defend Asgard. Thank you. Thor almost burst into tears. Look, he still has to thank me. By then, I will be the guardian of Asgard. Thinking about it, Thor couldn't help but raise his head and look into the distance. It's a pity that this is a basement and the background is a bit poor. Otherwise his figure would really look majestic. However, Ronan didn't pay any attention to him at all. He stared at the infinity gauntlet in front of him and couldn't help but smile. Hey, little darling, please give me a monthly ticket. It's almost the end of the month. Brothers, don't hide your monthly tickets. They will be useless next month. Chapter 68. What is Asgard's banquet? Before leaving the Asgard treasury, Ronan took a reluctant look. Don't worry, little darlings. Wait here for a while. I will come back to pick you up sooner or later. You are all my little darlings then. Ronan was driven out of the basement by the ruthless guards. Ronan, who was driven away, couldn't help but look at the soldiers. When the day of Ragnarok comes, I will definitely capture you and take you to Earth and let you guard the treasury for me. This work attitude deserves a thumbs up. On the way back, Thor kept saying that he would give Ronan a welcome meeting. By then, the banquet he saw before would not be at the same level at all. It is rumored that there is also the best dancing girl in the whole of Asgard, who is already waiting for Ronan's call. Hearing Thor's suggestion, Ronan refused again and again. He said that he was still a child, and these things were too forbidden, so he could not participate for the time being. It's a pity. Well, it's a pity that in the end he still couldn't beat Thor, and under Thor's coercion, he was forced to agree to attend the banquet. Thor even raised the issue to the friendship between Kamertaj and Asgard. What can Ronan do? Well, Ronan has no solution at all. After all, for Kamataj, he can only be forced to sacrifice himself. Back in the hall, Ronan found that the Ancient One had disappeared, and so did Odin. After asking the guards, he found out that the Ancient One had gone back first, and he also left a message for Ronan. Let him have a good time in Asgard, just don't forget to go back to school tomorrow. Hearing this, Ronan was dumbfounded. Teacher, I don't want to play here at all, I just want to. Gurgle gurgle. Without thinking, Ronan was taken directly to the banquet hall by the extremely excited Thor. As Thor shouted from the top, thousands of people responded, and they were about to overturn the entire Asgard. Oh no, the whole banquet hall was full. Those Asgard cabinets seemed to have been used to it. Before Ronan sat down and saw what the people around him looked like, all kinds of dishes were served. Ronan had never seen roasted animal meat, geoduck-like fruits, and even a roasted whole lamb. Anyway, how can I put it? In addition to meat, there was still meat, and the remaining vegetables and fruits looked very similar to meat. In addition, the most served were Asgard's specialty wines. According to Thor, these wines are brewed every year in Asgard and stored year after year. Now Ronan is basically drinking wine from 100 years ago. Oh, for Asgard, there is no difference between 100 years of aging and a few years. Looking at the barrels in front of him, that were as big as a hill, Ronan couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Drinking so much, wouldn't it kill people? He originally wanted to find an excuse, saying that he was still young and couldn't drink. But in Asgard, there is no rule that minors are not allowed to drink. So, Ronan drank wine for the first time in this world, and it was alien wine. The taste. How can I say it? Anyway, after drinking it, I felt dizzy, and everything looked so white and big. Oh, sister, I know you are warm and hospitable in Asgard, but don't hug me so tightly, I can't breathe. Oh, and this sister, let's drink. Why are you standing on the chair? Apart from anything else, the key is that the wind is too strong and it's ventilated. I'm worried that you will catch a cold. Oh, this aunt, forget it, I'm still young and don't know anything. Also, what's wrong with you ladies? Why did you blindfold me? Huh? Let me drink with my eyes blindfolded? No, I'm still a child. I can't drink. I can only drink milk. Oh, no, no, why am I lying on two sausages? This is not decent. What? My pants are wet with wine. Do you want me to change my pants? It has to be said that in terms of hospitality, Asgard dares to say that it is the first, and no one says that it is the second. Ronan has really seen what a real party is. Well, literally. He seems to have done everything, but he didn't do anything. Anyway, he held on to his last bottom line and took a lot of advantage from the enemy. Ronan had to admire himself. Even if he was drunk, he would win. He was still the virgin he once was, without any change. The next morning, Ronan was woken up by Thor and prepared for another breakfast. Good brother, your fighting ability is really strong. You can actually get me drunk. Thor patted Ronan's shoulder excitedly, looking very excited. His hand was very strong, and he woke Ronan up directly from his sleepiness. Ronan covered his shoulder with a grin and took a few breaths of cold air. I almost broke the thread of the clothes I just bought. It's okay. It's my first time drinking. I don't have much experience. I didn't do anything excessive last night, did I? Ronan rubbed his shoulders and sat up from the bed. Well. He staggered and almost fell flat on his face. The sequelae of drinking last night were still there, and Ronan stepped on the ground, just like stepping on cotton. I didn't do anything excessive. It's just that your pants seem to be wet by the wine. The sisters wanted to change your pants, but you refused. Here, take a look for yourself. Thor said to Ronan. Ronan covered his hand with his hands. His face suddenly changed. It's normal for young people to be a little impatient. Especially for the first time drinking. It's normal to be unable to hold the wine glass when drunk. It's just that the position of the pants that got wet is not right. That's all. Yes. That's all. Forget it. I'll change it when I get home. What shall we have for breakfast? Ronan steadied his steps, picked up the water cup next to him, and took a sip of water. Pa. Why is it still wine? What breakfast? At this time, there's just an early morning banquet. Everything is ready, just waiting for you to go. Thor put his arm around Ronan's shoulders, obviously treating him as a drinking buddy. Especially after experiencing the banquet last night, he saw Ronan's fighting power. No, 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 I can't come. Ronan shook his head frantically, perfectly demonstrating the results of his physical training in camouflage. The shaking of his head was like a propeller. If Thor hadn't held him down, he would have taken off. Today is class time. If I don't go, I'm afraid I will. Wait. Thor, what time is it now? Earth time. Ronan seemed to have suddenly thought of something. 7:10. What's wrong? Thor glanced at the old clock hanging on the wall. Ronan's face froze. 7:10. Doesn't that mean he's going to be late? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Please give me a monthly ticket. Please give me a recommendation ticket. Chapter 69. Working like a slave for Tony Stark. How should I put it? This time, Ronan was probably the fastest in his life. It should be faster than the first time. After knowing the time, Ronan opened the secret door directly and jumped back to camouflage without saying a word. Moreover, he brushed his teeth and washed his face at a speed that ordinary people could not reach. He even changed his pants in the middle. After all, it was very uncomfortable to be wet by wine. Then, he flew to his home in New York through another portal, packed his school bag in 30 seconds, rode his bicycle, and rushed out the door at a speed that surpassed Maybach. Of course, this refers to the Maybach on the streets of New York. Then, at the last minute before being late, Ronan finally caught up. Look, this is the speed of camouflage. If you want to know what the consequences of being drunk are, just look at Ronan, who is standing and listening to the class. The class time of the next day. In the last class in the morning, he finally couldn't help it and fell asleep on the table. In the originally quiet and peaceful classroom, there was a faint snoring sound. What will the teacher do? There is no doubt that Ronan was discovered by the teacher and then stood to listen to the whole class. Although there are a lot of homework in America, there are very few students in class. Once a student has any slightest movement, the teacher will find it at the first time. Not to mention that Ronan was still blatantly snoring. If Ronan had not performed well in normal times and had the right skin color, he could not say what the consequences would be. Finally, at the moment when the bell rang for the end of get out of class, Ronan finally came to life. They had no classes in the afternoon, and tomorrow was a holiday. According to the regulations of their school, starting from tomorrow, the next 4 weeks are all winter vacation. Among them, Christmas is also included. Ronan can use this time to have a good rest. Originally, he didn't sleep the day before because of homework, and he couldn't sleep until 5 in the morning last night. Ronan felt that he was almost useless. He had to go back to sleep and sleep for an afternoon. In addition, the extremely exciting summer camp before made Ronan have no time to rest. Now, he finally has time. The first time the teacher stepped out of the door, Ronan immediately packed his school bag and walked quickly towards the door. Ronan. Ronan. Two people called Ronan at the same time. Ronan turned his head in surprise and looked at the source of the voice. The two people who called him were Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. What were they going to do? Under normal circumstances, Ronan was not familiar with either of them and could only be considered an ordinary classmate. No, it should be said that Ronan had an ordinary classmate relationship with everyone. However, not only Ronan was surprised by this, even Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker were a little surprised. They did not expect that the other party would call Ronan together with them. What do you want? After all, they were classmates, and Ronan was embarrassed not to answer. So, he could only resist the sleepiness and stopped. You go first. You go first. This time, the two people said in unison again. Ronan couldn't help rolling his eyes. Don't tell me that the two of you are deliberately showing off your tacit understanding in front of me. You go first. You go first. I don't know why. The two people seemed to hear each other's inner thoughts. Ronan, standing aside, could even see the subtle expression in the eyes of the two people. Okay, stop talking and listen to me. Ladies first. Gwen, you speak first. Ronan had had enough of the two people showing off their affection for no reason and directly decided the order of speaking. He was afraid that if this continued, he would really be fed dog food. On the first day of school after the winter vacation, which is 4 weeks later, there will be an interview for an intern at Stark Industries. We must arrive downstairs at Stark Industries before 2:30 p.m. to attend the interview. Gwen Stacy handed Ronan an invitation. What was written on the invitation was an interview invitation from Stark Industries. Huh. Ronan's face was full of question marks. He knew about this. Their school has cooperation with several large companies. Every year, these companies will select a group of high school students to participate in interviews in the company. If the interview is successful, they will become interns of the company. If the internship performance is good, these companies will sponsor your college expenses. But the price is that you need to work for them after graduation. For the company, this is considered to have won over talents in advance. For those students who are both good in character and learning, it is a good opportunity to work in these big companies, especially for poor students. Of course, there are almost no poor students in their school. These are all normal. The only thing that makes Ronan curious is why he was chosen. He must have signed up. He casually wrote the most familiar Stark group. After all, the whole class needs to sign up symbolically. If he doesn't participate, he will be too different. Who said that there is no formalism in America? Ronan will definitely beat him up. I thought that with his usual level of only upper middle level, Stark Group would definitely eliminate him. But now, things seem to be a little wrong. Stark Group is a company at the top of the pyramid. How could it be interested in him? Are you okay? Gwen Stacy waved the invitation in front of Ronan, interrupting Ronan's thoughts. Oh, then, I'm fine. I want to ask, can I not go? Ronan pulled the corner of his mouth and took the invitation from Gwen Stacy. He felt very strange in his heart. He just saved Tony Stark's life, and now he has to work for him? And he's an intern who works like a slave? What a joke. Then I suggest you have a good talk with Teacher Jenny. Gwen Stacy smiled and pointed out a clear way for Ronan. Ronan's face darkened. Who is Teacher Jenny? She is notorious for being nosy in the school. If she knew that one of the students she was in charge of was selected by the Stark Group, but gave up voluntarily, the result would be imaginable. But I heard that Stark Tower seems to have been destroyed by alien invasion. Will it be in time? Ronan thought of the scene when he came back yesterday. He was struggling. He was still making the last struggle. 4 weeks is enough time for Stark Tower to recover because their construction speed is too fast. I heard that they seem to have used some latest technology. Gwen Stacy had obviously found out everything. With her grades, she almost had a firm grasp on both Stark Group and Osborn Industries. She could choose where to go. Okay, I know. Ronan was now just about to spread his hands like a little bear. Gwen Stacy nodded, glanced at Peter Parker, then left Ronan's place, and walked straight out of the classroom. Ronan and Peter Parker were the only ones left in the classroom. Well, what do you want to see me about? Ronan put the invitation into his bag and looked at Peter Parker on the side. Peter Parker opened his mouth, looked around, and pulled Ronan's wrist and pulled him out. What a strong force. Ronan was slightly startled, and the ring of Ragdoll was about to unfold subconsciously. But he reacted the next second. Could this Peter Parker have turned into a little spider? Just like that, Ronan let Peter Parker pull him, and the two ran all the way to an alley. There was no one else here. Okay, now can you tell me what you are going to do? Ronan shook his wrist, and a faint pain came from his wrist. This is only him. If it were an ordinary person, Peter Parker would probably break his wrist. From this we can judge that Peter Parker has now been renamed a failed man. Chapter 70. It's you. It must be you. Peter Parker looked around and took a deep breath. Look. After saying these two words, he threw away his school bag and approached the wall of the alley. Under Ronan's gaze, he actually climbed up the wall step by step, like a spider. Ronan widened his eyes in disbelief. He was not surprised by Peter Parker's ability, because he knew all of this. He was surprised why Peter Parker did this in front of him. According to Peter Parker's character, shouldn't he keep a secret and not tell anyone? Why did he suddenly show his ability in front of him? You know, his relationship with Peter Parker is not that good. Boom. A slight sound rang out, and Peter Parker jumped down from the wall. The sound of landing was very light. If the alley was not too quiet, Ronan might not be able to hear it. Is this the ability of the spider mutation? Are you a superpower? Ronan took 2 steps back with horror, and he used all the performances he learned from domestic TV dramas. Although it may be a bit exaggerated, it should be okay to deceive a high school student, right? This time it was Peter Parker's turn to be speechless. The last time, which was 2 days ago, Peter Parker saw Ronan step into the portal with his own eyes. Now Ronan showed this expression. Did he think he was a child who was easy to fool? Ronan, I know you are also a superpower. 2 days ago, the day when aliens invaded the Earth, it was in this alley. I saw you step through a portal and disappeared in a flash. I was hiding here at the time. Peter Parker pointed to the trash can next to him with a helpless look on his face. He was hiding here at the time. Everything Ronan did was seen by him. Ronan slapped his forehead with a helpless look on his face. At that time, he was in a hurry to go back to Camotage to watch the excitement and forgot to check if there was anyone around. There has been no mistakes in all these years, but that one time he didn't check and he made a mistake. And the person who saw it was Peter Parker. Peter, is there a possibility that you saw it wrong? If I can disappear in a flash like you said, then why would I come to school? Wouldn't it be better to lead a tour group to make money? Ronan took a deep breath and tried to convince people with reason. If this happened to someone else, Ronan's argument might be effective. Yes, how could someone with such ability still come to high school? However, it didn't work for Peter Parker, because the other party also had superpowers. No, I didn't see it wrong. That was definitely your face. Peter Parker shook his head firmly. He didn't believe Ronan's nonsense. What he saw was what he saw. Ronan couldn't help but clench his fists. Why didn't this kid listen to advice? Don't adults need to give each other a way out? Oh, they are not yet adults, so it's okay. Then is there another possibility that those brutal aliens have become my appearance? They want to imitate me and integrate into the Earth and lurk. But because of the efforts of the Avengers, their conspiracy failed. Ronan threw out another theory. This time, it was Peter Parker's turn to hesitate. Because he had seen many alien movies that told him that some aliens can transform. Even after the transformation, even the person himself can't be distinguished clearly. So, is what Ronan said true? Seeing the hesitant Peter Parker, Ronan immediately stepped up his offensive. Look, Peter, first of all, you may have been too scared at the time, so it's normal to see it wrong. But you are determined that you didn't see it wrong, and I believe you. In my opinion, there must be an alien who turned into my appearance and wanted to teleport to my house to kill me and replace me. Finally lurked on Earth. Ronan's eyes began to roll and his smart brain began to work frantically. His country has a history of thousands of years in fooling people. Now, he only needs to absorb a little bit. It's easy to deceive a high school student. As for the aliens wanting to replace him and lurk, if the Skrulls really dare to do so, Ronan will let him do it. It depends on whether Ancient One can do it or not. Think about it again. If it was really me, and I had that superpower, would I be able to resist showing it? Just like you, your ability is also very strong, but you can't help wanting to share it with others. That's normal. This time, Ronan not only began to reason, but also brought Peter Parker in. Ronan didn't have to guess at all. He knew that Peter Parker must have the urge to show his ability to others. The desire for performance of young people cannot be concealed. Otherwise, there would be no Spider-Man. Hearing this, Peter Parker even nodded in agreement. Seeing Peter Parker nod, Ronan was overjoyed. He knew that half of the matter was already done. So, it is very likely that you saw aliens that day, but I strongly suggest that you don't tell others. After all, no one can be sure whether the people in the White House will think that you have been infected by aliens. Then take you to some secret laboratory for slice research. After all, you also have this superpower. If you want to convince someone, it is useless to just reason. You must also bring some intimidation. First, talk about the reason, then pull the other party into it, and finally talk about the disadvantages of this matter. As long as you do this, there is a high probability that the other party will hesitate, and finally you will take him down. At this time, Peter Parker was obviously panicked. He is just a high school student now. Moreover, He has just gained superpowers, and he must have thought of these dangers in his mind. So when Ronan said it, he immediately regretted it very much. What he regretted was why he was so impulsive and reckless, and directly showed his ability in front of Ronan. If he could calm down and do some investigation, or even ask Ronan indirectly, maybe he wouldn't have to do this. So, now there are only 2 words in his heart. Regret. Very regretful. Seeing Peter Parker like this, Ronan also knew that the matter was done. So, it's time to start the last step. Don't worry, Peter, I didn't see anything today, and we didn't say anything. I will help you keep the secret. You know, I'm the most strict person. Nickname, the New York Riddler. Ronan patted Peter Parker on the shoulder, and without waiting for Peter Parker to speak, he turned and left. On the one hand, he has said enough, and continuing to say more will only backfire. On the other hand, this is a blank space, allowing Peter Parker to think clearly. Leaving is the best choice. Thank you. I just want to tell someone about it. Some things are very uncomfortable to keep in your heart. Just after Ronan walked out a few steps, Peter Parker opened his mouth to thank him. You see, he also has to thank us. Of course, Ronan selectively deleted the second half of Peter Parker's sentence. Ronan did not look back, but just stretched out his hand and waved to Peter Parker. Yeah. You're welcome. Goodbye. Please give me a monthly ticket now that the new book period is over. If you want to have exposure, the only way is to get on the monthly ticket list. I don't ask how many places I can get, at least I can enter the rankings. So, I need everyone's firepower support. Chapter 71 Infinity Gauntlet plus Space Gem. Ronan hadn't slept all night the night before, and with the hangover from the previous night, he slept for a whole afternoon and a whole night, finally making up for the lost sleep. When he opened his eyes again, it was already 7 o'clock in the morning of the next day. In fact, it was not Ronan who got up on his own initiative, but the training sounds of the trainee mages outside the window woke him up. Ronan rubbed his eyes and sat up reluctantly. Next to him was the pseudo-infinity gauntlet, brought back from Asgard the day before yesterday. Of course, Ronan didn't know the specific effect yet. Ronan had tried it yesterday. Although it was a replica, after Ronan put it on, the gloves would shrink to the size of ordinary gloves. It's just that the appearance is a little exaggerated. In the 6 grooves above, all of them are empty without exception. Ronan's mind moved, and a golden secret door appeared in front of him. He stepped over the secret door, and came directly to the private treasure house of the Ancient One. Here, there is a small area that belongs to Ronan. It was just a small area, and there were only 2 things placed alone. The Tyrant's butcher knife belonging to Thanos, and the cosmic cube, which Ronan picked up and got, was the space gem. The rest was blank. Ronan picked up the cosmic cube on it, took another look at his collection, and couldn't help saying, poor. Too poor. Especially compared with the huge collection of Ancient One on the other side, Ronan was even more inferior. No, he had to plunder the treasure house of Asgard first. Oh no, it was to save the treasure. Crack. Ronan directly crushed the cosmic cube. After removing the outer layer of the cube, the most precious space gem inside was revealed. Ronan, who had practiced the secret gate and dimension mirror, felt the space fluctuations at the first time. The energy contained in a small stone was unimaginable to Ronan. Of course, Ronan didn't dare to touch the space gem directly with his hands. He still remembered the experience of the awkward dancer Star-Lord very clearly. What kind of bloodline is that of others? What kind of bloodline is that of Ronan? He doesn't want to die, but Ronan wants to die. Therefore, Ronan used the method of taking the time stone in camouflage and applied it to the space stone in front of him. It really worked. Think about Thanos. He even directly collided with 6 infinity stones. The terrifying energy that erupted only took half of his life, but he still survived and even moved freely. But if Ronan dared to detonate the space stone in his hand, I'm afraid Ronan would not even have a slag left. Ronan exhaled lightly, and the next moment was the most important moment. He put his left hand into the Infinity Gauntlet, and soon the Infinity Gauntlet shrank to the size of Ronan's left hand. Then, Ronan slowly moved the gem closer to the groove on it, until he felt a suction coming from the glove. Ronan let go of his right hand. Boom. With the sound of stones hitting each other, Ronan could clearly feel that a huge force had erupted from the small space stone. This huge force instantly swept Ronan's left arm, and a strong sense of tearing arose spontaneously. Fuck! Ronan roared, and his only remaining right hand quickly formed a seal in front of his chest, trying to cast a spell. But soon, a mirror space swallowed him directly. The secret door appeared from behind Ronan, and Ancient One stepped out of the door. She brought Ronan into his mirror space. The moment the space gem and the infinite gauntlet came into contact, she keenly sensed that a huge energy had erupted here. So, she rushed here as soon as possible. When she saw the glove on Ronan's left hand and the gem on the glove, Ancient One seemed to understand something. She immediately formed seals with both hands, and the spell was ready. Ronan, if you want to stop what is happening next, I can help you. But if you want to use this gem, you can only rely on yourself to get through it. Ancient One's voice rang out. Ronan injured the pain from his left arm, glanced at the crackling electric light outside, and shook his head at Ancient One. Teacher, I'm fine. Although he had expected that this would happen when the gem was placed on the infinite gauntlet. But what he didn't expect was that this reaction would be so strong. At that time, Thanos also showed a very painful expression, but he had 6 gems. And Ronan was already in so much pain with just one. You can imagine how abnormal Thanos' physique is. Paralysis, tearing, pain, and then paralysis again. In such a cycle, in just a dozen seconds, Ronan felt a pain he had never experienced in his life. Ronan knew that this was the price of using gems. The Guardians of the Galaxy and others, under the impact of the power gem, must share the damage with everyone to survive. You know, Quill and his friends are not ordinary Earthlings. Let alone others. Just Quill, he has half the blood of the Celestials. His father's body is even a planet. Even with such a physique, it seems so difficult to directly contact the impact of the power gem. Not to mention Ronan, a weak Earthling. Being able to withstand such an impact is probably because the Infinity Gauntlet has reduced some of the power. With the continuous lightning and thunder in his left arm, Ronan gradually adapted to this feeling. He was sure that his left arm must have been torn now, and the degree should be very serious. But at the same time, he could feel that a power he had never had before quietly appeared. At this time, Ronan could clearly feel that this was the power from the space gem. Finally, after nearly a minute, the tearing feeling from the glove slowly eased. The lightning on the surface also gradually disappeared. Hoo. Ronan kept panting, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He had only seen Thanos easily put on the glove with 6 infinite gems, and Bruce Banner did the same. But he forgot that the former was a member of the Eternals, and his physical fitness was not comparable to that of humans. The latter, who was also irradiated by gamma rays, naturally had a physical strength that was self-evident. Only Ronan was a poor 16-year-old high school student. Teacher, thank you for your hard work. As soon as he recovered, Ronan thanked Guyi. If it weren't for Guyi pulling him into the mirror space, the energy that just escaped would be enough to destroy the treasure house. I saved my collection, didn't I? Guyi smiled and approached Ronan, pulling him up from his kneeling position. At this time, Ronan's pajamas were soaked. Ronan looked at the space gem that was glowing slightly in his left hand, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. Because he felt the power from the space gem. That kind of power, as long as he moved his mind, he could use some very unique moves. For example, in this mirror space in front of him, Ronan only needed to wave his hand lightly. A ripple appeared in front of Guyi and Ronan. The mirror space that Guyi used seemed to be erased and disappeared. The two returned to the treasure house. Guyi narrowed his eyes and looked at Ronan. Teacher, this is... However, before Ronan finished speaking, his eyes rolled and he fainted. Guyi was quick and hugged Ronan. Looking at Ronan who had fainted, Guyi let out a sigh of relief. I used all my strength to create the mirror space, but you wiped it out with such ease. Ronan, how powerful is your mental power? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 72. Can you also use the space gem? When Ronan regained consciousness, it was another familiar day. It was still the familiar alarm clock of mage training, and it was still the familiar smell. Ronan blocked the sunlight with his left hand, and a sharp pain came from his left hand. Hiss. It was extremely painful. No need to think, the muscle was torn. His left arm had been wrapped in gauze like a mummy, and there was a strong smell of medicine coming out of it. This was Kamatage's secret medicine, which was specially used to treat muscle injuries. But Ronan seemed to have used too much. Feeling the pain coming from his head and left arm at the same time, Ronan couldn't help but take a few breaths of cold air. Damn, to use this thing, you actually need mental power. Also, what level was the mirror space of the teacher yesterday? I used it once, and it drained my mental power. Ronan rubbed his temple with his right hand, and couldn't help but complain. You know, with Ronan's current mental power, although it is not one of the best, it is rare. I still remember Ebony Moore, who thought he was so strong with just a few stars. Unfortunately, he ran into Ronan, a wallflower. Gurgle gurgle, Ronan's stomach protested. So, Ronan could only walk out of the bedroom with a hoo 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 sound. He was going to find something to eat. The king and Mordo, who were in charge of training, patrolled back and forth in the square. Cassilis, who had a rebellious mind, was observing the surroundings sinisterly. Especially after seeing Ronan appear, his face changed even more. Seeing him like this, Ronan couldn't help but curl his lips. A villain is a villain. Your expression is too obvious, and your style is different from others. Especially the people who follow you. What do they look like? The villain face is too obvious. In fact, Ronan couldn't remember when Cassilis ran away, but at least now, he is still in Kamatage, and has no intention of leaving. However, the librarian has repeatedly told him that he can't read the banned books. It seems that the time for defection is not far away. The first thing Ronan did when he came out was to run to the kitchen, and with the remaining food, he ate 3 bowls of rice with his weak body and strong will. You know, the bowl Ronan mentioned is the soup bowl. As a mage, he needs to train every day, so he consumes a lot. The soup bowl has become his bowl for rice. When he walked out of the kitchen with a burp, his eyes just met Mordo. Ronan, the Ancient One is looking for you. He said that, when you wake up, he will go to the temple. She is waiting for you inside. Seeing Ronan appear, Mordo tilted his head in the direction of the temple. Ronan touched his stomach, then made an okay gesture, and walked towards the direction of the temple. Cassilis, who heard this, was almost furious. Why? Why is a waste who eats and waits for death every day the successor to the next supreme sorcerer? And he, Cassilis, is obviously the most talented mage in Kamatage. Why can't Ancient One look at him? The fire of jealousy burned. Of course, all this was just Ronan's imagination, and it couldn't be true. But Ronan did see the change in Cassilius's expression when Mordo said that Ancient One was waiting for Ronan. Is this another buddy who can't get his love? But he loves the position of Supreme Sorcerer. Ronan was not worried. He didn't even need to do anything for Cassilius. Walking into the temple, Ancient One was sitting there drinking tea as usual. Teacher, do you have something to talk to me about? Ronan walked quickly to the opposite side of Ancient One and sat down. I don't know how Ancient One spends his days. He doesn't watch TV, doesn't play with his mobile phone, and doesn't even go out. Ronan may never learn this kind of concentration in his life. Are you okay? Ancient One didn't answer Ronan's words, but asked about Ronan's situation first. Yesterday, she sent Ronan back to the bedroom, took off her gloves, and applied medicine to Ronan. It's nothing, just a little pain in the head and arm. Ronan subconsciously raised his arm, and then the pain attacked him again. Hiss. Ronan couldn't remember how many times he had sucked in a breath of cold air. It made his teeth cold. You are still too reckless. Although the power of the Infinity Stone is strong, it is not so easy to control. Don't make such reckless attempts next time. Ancient One didn't blame Ronan much, but just gave advice. Ronan nodded in agreement. Next time. There will be no next time. Teacher, I have a question. The mirror space you used yesterday should be different from the one you usually use, right? That's why my mental power was drained in an instant. Ronan asked tentatively, although his mirror space is getting stronger step by adding points. However, Ancient One's mirror space is not the same as ordinary ones. Of course, Ronan's mirror space is different from Ancient One's. This is a very wonderful thing. The trick of mirror space is actually different for everyone. Yours is different from mine, and mine is different from others. This is normal. Ancient One did not directly answer Ronan's question, but after seeing Ronan's half-understanding eyes, he continued, in short, you must remember that the space gem can let you feel the fluctuations of space. At the same time, it can also let you judge the strength of space. So next time you use it, remember to protect yourself. For my dimension mirror, I can only tell you that you have not become an idiot. Your mental power is far beyond all the humans I have ever seen. The last sentence may be to satisfy Ronan's curiosity or to tell Ronan that he needs to pay attention to the loss of mental power. But after all, Ronan still almost understood. Since you have decided to use the power of that gem, I will take you to a place in the next few days. I will give you a special training. Teach you how to use the energy in that gem. Ancient One's words surprised Ronan. Ancient One can also use the power of the space gem. But soon Ronan was relieved. The space stone has existed on Earth for so many years. How could the Ancient One not have used it? It was only in the 1990s that Nick Fury brought the stone to S.H.I.E.L.D. What about before that? How could the Ancient One not know the power of the space stone after living for so long? So, it is normal that she is very familiar with the space stone. But Ronan is very curious about what moves the Ancient One will teach him. It's the end of the month, and the monthly votes have to be reset. Can we reach 500 votes? I haven't achieved 500 monthly votes yet. Chapter 73 The Mysterious Place of the Supreme Mage. However, the development of the matter surprised Ronan a little. Ancient One chose to leave Kamataj and ordered Mordo and Wang to manage Kamataj for 2 weeks, and then took Ronan to a strange place. There are many murals carved on the walls of this cave. Well, there are a lot of murals, but most of them are simple little people, and Ronan now needs someone to help explain. After all, in those movies, when the protagonists are exploring, there is always a role of popular science, and some supernatural things have to be explained as science. This is actually the cave where the first generation supreme sorcerer Agamotto practiced. The content of these murals generally tells the story of Agamotto's first experience of feeling magic power and transforming from an ordinary person into a wizard. Ancient One took Ronan and quickly passed the first half of the mural. Until the largest mural, Ancient One stopped. Ronan looked at the mural in front of him, and he seemed to see a lot of familiar things in the mural. I saw a man wearing a costume similar to Kamataj, with his hands facing the sky, and in his hands was the most basic spell of Kamataj, the Ring of Ragador. Although there was only a circle drawn on it, Ronan's first reaction was this move. On the top of the man's head, there were several short lines drawn, as if they meant golden light. On the sides, there were 2 pillar-like things. There seemed to be an ornament hanging on the man's chest, which vaguely looked a bit like the eye of Agamotto. In addition, at the top of the mural, there were 6 round things drawn. On the far left of the mural, there was a hand drawn, but there were 6 grooves of the same size on the back of the hand. There was a groove on each of the 5 fingers, and there was also one in the center of the back of the hand. There was no need to think about it. This was an infinite gauntlet. If you look at it together, then the 6 round objects on the top of the head are the 6 infinite gems. The man in front of me is Agamotto? What the hell? There were infinite gloves in Agamotto's era. Teacher, is this our ancestor? Ronan pointed at the bald head. No, it was the person with the glittering light on his head and asked, if this is Agamotto, then this big guy is a bit too powerful. Because from the display on the mural, this big guy seems to have controlled 6 infinite gems. There is even an infinite gauntlet. Did he change something? However, Ancient One looked at Ronan silently and shook his head. This is not the portrait of the ancestor Agamotto. The last time I saw this portrait, it was not like this. Ancient One's words surprised Ronan. Ward hair? Or a mural that can change? Why has he never heard of such a thing? Ronan, do you know the origin of the infinite gems? Ancient One looked at the mural in front of him, and his thoughts seemed to drift far away. Ronan nodded. The origin of the 6 infinite gems was written in a book. And this book is a book in the Kamataj library, but most mages cannot see it. Ronan was only allowed to read this book last year. At the beginning of the universe, there was nothing. The Big Bang threw 6 elemental crystals into the depths of the new universe. They are also called infinity gems. Each of these infinity gems controls a basic aspect of existence: space, reality, power, soul, mind, and the time gem that Arcamatage has guarded for generations. Ronan's theoretical knowledge is still relatively solid. After all, reading these things is much more interesting than reading knowledge in books. Many things can be regarded as myths. Yes, this is the origin of the infinity gems. But what if I tell you that this is just a record? Or, what we have recorded now is a view that most people agree with. There is another view that is not accepted by most people. The Ancient One gently stroked the mural above, and the originally extremely dim stone surface was visible to the naked eye, and it actually emitted a faint light. What the hell? Touchscreen. Ronan watched as the Ancient One pulled one of the 6 infinity gems down from the top, and moved it to the infinity glove on the far left. What kind of operation is this? Now Ronan's forehead was full of question marks. He couldn't understand the operation in front of him at all. Touch to light up the screen, and then slide to unlock. These stone murals are too advanced, right? Millennium Antiques produced last month. The reason why Ronan thought that the action of the Ancient One just now was to slide to unlock was because when the stone was put into the infinity gauntlet, the mural in front of him actually moved. There was a kind of, how to say it? You are watching the kind of small pictures that cannot be shared with others at home, but suddenly the heroine in the picture began to move. In simple terms, it is from JPG to GIF. There is also a meaning of evolving into a short video of dozens of seconds. Isn't this a ghost or something? Someone once said that these 6 infinity stones are actually beyond time. Take the space gem in your hand as an example. Now it is in your hand. Even if someone wants to travel through the timeline and go back to the past to take this space gem from you, then he will only find that there is no space gem in that world. The Ancient One looked at the mural on the wall that was changing, and his voice was very light. At this time, the person on the mural seemed to be fighting against the remaining 5 infinity stones. No one knows the specific reason. Isn't that right? Teacher, you know, I went to the main universe once, but they borrowed the infinity stones from the past. Ronan frowned. There was one thing that impressed him deeply. That was when Steve Rogers went to return the other 5 stones. He did not come back in the end. Instead, he chose to stay in the past and fulfilled his promise with Peggy Carter. In the end, the person who came back to deliver the shield became the elderly version of Steve Rogers. Are you sure they borrowed it from the past? If they traveled through the timeline, why did they appear in our universe? Ancient One looked at Ronan with a smile and asked a very important question. For a moment, Ronan was also stunned. Yes, if they traveled through the timeline, why did they come to this universe? But Ronan had also seen the old look of Steve Rogers. There seemed to be something wrong between these 2 statements. Or maybe, when they came back to find the space stone, the time stone and the mind stone, something went wrong in the middle, which led to them traveling through a parallel universe. For a moment, Ronan's mind became a bit muddled. Chapter 74. The universe you are in is the main universe. In the final analysis, this is the gap in cognition. Ancient One seemed to deliberately throw this question for Ronan to answer. In Ronan's cognition, this kind of thing is basically impossible. Although according to Ronan's explanation, it may be that there was an error when they crossed the timeline, so they crossed into Ronan's parallel universe. But this explanation is really far-fetched. If the probability of error is so high, why didn't other people appear when they crossed? This is simply inexplicable. Snap. At this moment, Ancient One's hand patted Ronan on the shoulder. What makes you think that their side is the main universe and ours is a parallel universe? Why can't their universe be a separated parallel universe? Ancient One's words made Ronan stunned. What does it mean? Isn't this normal? Their side is the main universe, and our side is a parallel. Thinking of this, Ronan suddenly shuddered, and he looked at Ancient One in disbelief. Although I don't know what made you mistakenly believe that their so-called universe is the main universe, but I can tell you one thing clearly. There has never been a distinction between the main universe and the parallel universe between universes. If you have to make a distinction, there is only one point. The place where you are is the main universe, and other places are parallel universes. Ancient One's words likely shattered Ronan's previous impression of Marvel. When Ronan saw Tony Stark and others who came through, he had an idea in his heart. Oh, it turns out that I traveled through a parallel universe. But Ronan never thought that perhaps in the eyes of the locals, the universe they are in is the main universe. And those people are just visitors from the parallel universe. In other words, you knew from the beginning that those people came from a parallel world. Then why are their rules different from ours? Ronan secretly went to the barbecue restaurant once after school that day. However, he did not see the promised elderly version of Steve Rogers. At that time, Ronan thought that this might be because of some changes in the future, so Steve Rogers in this universe did not choose to go back to the past. However, when Ronan heard what Ancient One said today, he seemed to understand something. I don't need to tell you the concept of parallel universes. In fact, you also know it. It is both similar and different. Perhaps after their universe was separated, it experienced an unknown explosion and restart, so their universe changed in terms of rules. Of course, this is also my guess. Ancient One looked at Ronan with a smile, telling this so-called guess. But Ronan had the urge to roll his eyes. Teacher, the firm tone you spoke in did not sound like a guess. Have you forgotten that your clone in that universe has met me once? Oh, no, it can't be called a clone. It seems that each one is you? Of course, Ronan is also guessing. Then according to what you said, these 6 Infinity Stones have transcended the timeline. But is this possible? Ronan scratched his head, and now he can only scratch his head. Because what Ancient One said now almost touched his blind spot of knowledge. People say that the emergence of mysterious power is a major impact on the 3 views of ordinary humans. Ronan didn't react much to this impact. After all, he even experienced time travel. But when Ancient One mentioned the concept of transcending the timeline, he was also at a loss. This blind spot is really a bit too big. Don't overestimate the so-called time. Compared with the universe, if there is no universe, there is no concept of time. But if there is no concept of time, the universe is still the same universe. I don't know whether the rules of the universe will change, but I can tell you clearly that in our universe, these 6 infinite gems have transcended the timeline. Of course, you can even think that someone deliberately modified the rules of our or other universes. It's just that person exists. At this point, Ancient One did not continue to speak, but looked at the mural on the stone slab. Although the mural only had a few movements, it was a pure dynamic picture of a few seconds. However, Ancient One seemed to see something that Ronan could not see on it. Without time, the universe is still the same universe. Maybe there are people above the universe. Suddenly, Ronan's brain seemed to explode. He seemed to understand a lot of things. The universe is still the same universe, but the rules in each universe are not fixed. In other words, the concept of God throwing dice is not valid. As for whether someone deliberately modified some rules, Ronan thought of one thing at the first time. The observer. Thinking of this, Ronan suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. Although there were rocks above his head, Ronan's eyes seemed to have broken through many things at this moment. He seemed to see a picture that did not exist. A bald short man, with glowing eyes and a reflective scalp, did not look like a human. This bald short man was observing the parallel timelines with interest. There seemed to be a barrier between him and these parallel timelines. Just like that layer of box. When he looked at a timeline, he suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling surged in his heart. He seemed to be seen by someone. No, that's not right. This feeling is not seeing, but being noticed. The bald short man's face changed drastically. This kind of thing is something he has never experienced before. They were born at the beginning of the universe, and their technology was even hundreds of millions of years ahead of the universe. How could anyone be aware of his existence? Although some universes have proposed similar conjectures to their observers, they are just conjectures. Everyone thinks there is such a person, but no one has ever noticed his existence. But this time is completely different. Someone seems to have discovered him. The observer began to observe each timeline frantically, but that feeling was only for a moment, and now it has long been unfelt. When he finished reading all the timelines, he did not find any problems. So, he could only attribute this to his own over-suspicion. However, Ronan, who was on Earth, had already come back to his senses. At that moment, He felt that he seemed to see the observer's appearance, but it felt like nothing happened. So Ronan could only attribute it to his impression of the observer in his previous life. Big head. If you dare to peek at me, sooner or later I will let you see enough face to face. This chapter was actually written before the Nobel Prize was announced, so I made some revisions later. I originally wanted to delete it, but I found that this part is related to a subsequent plot, so I can only follow the previous settings for some aspects. I never thought that I would have to learn the latest things about quantum entanglement again halfway through writing a Marvel fanfiction. It's so hard for me. But fortunately, the impact is not big, so don't worry about the small mistakes in it. Thank you everyone. Finally, please ask for monthly tickets. We will soon break the 500 monthly ticket mark. Go, go, go. Chapter 75. You are the only one. Anyway, for Ronan, all this was too far away. He couldn't even say that he fully understood high school physics, and he had to study more difficult topics such as the universe. It was really difficult for him. He could only take back all the thoughts that were radiating out now. Because he didn't forget the purpose of coming today. Teacher, about this space gem. Ronan raised his left hand. On this wireless glove, the space gem on it was emitting a faint light. Guyi nodded and took Ronan to a deeper place. There, it was still the familiar stone slab, but this time there were no murals on it, but text. These texts were actually very rare Sanskrit. Even in the big country in the east, Sanskrit has disappeared in daily life. This is. Ronan looked at the Sanskrit on the stone slab and began to read the meaning of it bit by bit. He must understand Sanskrit, because in many classics of Kamataj, the text written on it is Sanskrit. If you don't understand it, you can only use Google to search and translate. But when it comes to translation, there are always times when the words don't express the meaning. Therefore, from the time Ronan was very young, Ancient One made Sanskrit one of the courses. This records the process of the first supreme sorcerer, Agamotto, conquering the 6 Infinity Stones. It was passed down by word of mouth before, until one supreme sorcerer decided to record it on the stone tablet for the future supreme sorcerers to read. Ancient One looked at the text on it. The last time she read it was hundreds of years ago, but for Ronan, it was a brand new experience. The content about the ancestor Agamotto on the stone tablet occupied most of the content, all of which told about his search for the 6 Infinity Stones and his contribution to saving mankind. Only in the last part, the most critical point was written. In the end, after saving the crisis of mankind, Agamotto decided to return the 6 Infinity Stones to the universe. But he kept the time stone in his hands. Because according to the rules he set, the duty of the Supreme Sorcerer is to protect the Earth. If you have the time stone, you can prevent future crises in advance. But when returning the remaining 5 gems, Agamotto suddenly discovered that each Infinity Stone seemed to have a very weak consciousness. To put it simply, when in danger, these gems will protect themselves. But that's all. Although this consciousness is very weak, and more of an instinct, Agamotto judged that perhaps one day in the future, these Infinity Stones will really become conscious. So, from then on, Agamotto set the rules. In addition to the Time Stone, Kamataj will not allow the collection of any Infinity Stones. Because once one of the gems becomes conscious, no one can say what effect it will have on the same kind of gems. So, for safety reasons, Kamataj only keeps the time stone. Seeing this, Ronan was dumbfounded. Since the ancestor Agamotto has set the rules, why didn't Ancient One tell him? Or, did he bring him here today, just to tell him about this? Although the founder Agamotto set this rule, there is actually another paragraph behind it, which the supreme sorcerer in charge of carving did not engrave. Ancient One smiled and pointed to the stone slab. Ronan did not understand what it meant, and read it carefully from top to bottom again. Is there anything wrong? This stone slab is full of Agamotto's deeds. It can't be that there are not enough slabs, so it is not written? Ronan raised his head, and looked at Ancient One. He wanted to see a denial in Ancient One's eyes. However, he was disappointed. You are right, but it is only one of the reasons. The sentence that was not engraved, is written like this. Except for meeting the only one. Ancient One gave the final answer. The only one. Ronan was stunned. This was not the first time he had heard this word. Because before this, Ronan had heard this word from Ancient One. And it described Ronan. At that time, Ronan thought that Ancient One was just deceiving him, but he did not expect that Ancient One would bring up the old matter again. There was once a supreme sorcerer, whose strength and other aspects were almost comparable to that of the Grandmaster Agamotto. Plus, something happened that led him to believe that he was the only one. So, he began to look for the remaining 5 Infinity Stones in the universe. But because of this, the Earth encountered an unprecedented crisis. It was not until the last moment of his life that he suddenly realized that he had been wrong all along. So, he used the power of the Infinity Stones to repel all enemies, but he also died under this power. And that person was the teacher of the Supreme Sorcerer who carved the stone tablet. The Ancient One looked at the ancient stone tablet in front of him and told some very vague stories. What exactly happened that led the Supreme Sorcerer to believe that he was the only one? What happened that made him use the 6 Infinity Stones? And what was the reason for his sudden realization at the last moment? The Ancient One did not say any of these. And Ronan did not ask. He knew the Ancient One's temper, and when he needed to know, the Ancient One would definitely tell him. There must be other reasons for not telling him. Then teacher, you mean, I'm the only one. But this is too. Ronan wanted to say it in an abstract way, but he felt that the words were not expressive enough. He never understood what this so-called only one meant. It's normal that you don't know a lot of things. But sooner or later, the truth will come out. You just need to remember that you are the most special one among us. Guyuli patted Ronan on the shoulder, and in Ronan's puzzled eyes, he opened the door of the secret method again. It seems that at least today, Ronan will not get the answer. Ronan curled his lips. He should have known that this situation would happen. He has been with Guyuli for 16 years, and he has encountered Guyuli's riddle character more than once. Now I always feel that her riddle character is getting worse. But anyway, if Guyuli doesn't say it, Ronan can't do anything. He can't beat her, so what can he do? So angry, so angry, so angry. Obviously, curiosity has been aroused, but curiosity is not satisfied. What kind of thing is this? There is one more thing, Ronan. You have to remember the most important thing. On this road, you can only rely on yourself. No one can help you. At least, I can't. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.